All right, you and I are starting this story on a pitch-black night with a guy searching for his girlfriend's lost phone. He can't believe she dropped it, so he dials her number to track the sound, hoping to find it in the dark. It is ringing deep inside a sewer, but underneath the device, they spot strange, pulsating eggs. What on earth are those? He reaches down to grab the phone, but suddenly his entire body goes stiff. Meanwhile, his girlfriend is busy playing with her dog. She looks back and sees him still frozen on the ground, calling out to ask what is taking him so long. No response. Total silence. Terrified, she asks if he is all right, and when he finally turns around, he realizes something is horribly wrong. Those eggs are growing, literally consuming his hands and spreading across his skin like a nightmare. She starts to panic. She grabs her dog and bolts, but in her frantic escape, she trips and tumbles straight down into a dark ravine. Down there, she is surrounded by thousands of those bizarre eggs. Fast forward to a sunny day, where Arthur is headed to Sutton. Now pay attention here. It is his first big school trip, but he is feeling down because his crush is sitting way too far away. He never had the guts to talk to her at school, but a trip like this, it is the perfect opportunity. Suddenly, his friend Jack snaps him out of his daydream, offering him a snack, but Arthur is way too distracted to eat. Jack goes back to his phone, and that's when a girl named Mia stands up, waving her camera and demanding everyone's attention. She wants volunteers for her latest travel vlog, and immediately starts recording the whole class in high definition. Arthur ignores the noise, his mind completely focused on how to finally get closer to Sophie once they arrive at the city. They reach the city, and the vlogging continues. The teacher warns them that these busy streets can be quite dangerous. Arthur stares out at the urban sprawl, getting a strange, complicated vibe from this place that he just can't shake off. While he ponders the city's mood, the teacher announces a quick break for the class to rest and regroup. Mia keeps filming her vlog with the other students, and seeing her massive popularity makes our protagonist start to wonder. Maybe if he starts vlogging too, he can finally catch Sophie's eye. But then Jack appears, mocking the whole idea. He tells Arthur not to do anything that childish, claiming he has zero interest in joining the world of loud extroverts. In his mind, introverts like them would just get crushed. That is when Arthur notices Mia filming Sophie. You and I can see how excited she is, telling the camera she has wanted to visit Sutton since she was a little girl. Suddenly, she catches Arthur's eye. They lock gazes for a second, and he immediately looks away, totally embarrassed. She doesn't seem to mind, though, and goes right back to her friends as a group of popular boys approaches them. One guy named Kyle, the class captain, grabs Mia's camera and starts giving everyone tips on how to survive the capital. Watching Kyle's effortless confidence, Arthur wishes he could be more like those popular guys who always know what to say. Then Mia walks over to Arthur and Jack, complaining that she has not introduced these two weirdos to her followers yet. She scolds them for watching anime during the trip, but Jack actually stands up to introduce himself with surprising confidence. Mia is totally unimpressed by his vibe, though, and immediately pans the camera over to Arthur instead. She tells him to look at the lens and say something interesting, which makes our poor guy incredibly nervous. He stammers out that he is a senior at St. Jude's High, but his focus quickly drifts away again. He is staring at Sophie again, wishing he could just be by her side. Meanwhile, the rest of the class is partying. The teacher calls everyone together for a massive group photo, but then a flock of pigeons swoops down toward the girls. One girl looks completely disgusted by the birds, but one pigeon spots some feathers floating near a dark sewer opening. As the bird gets close, those horrifying eggs erupt and start consuming it whole. Arthur watches the entire thing in terror. Suddenly, another student walks up and asks Arthur for a favor, but he won't say exactly what it is just yet. He claims it is no big deal and will explain later, but back in that sewer, the pigeon is already gone. Those eggs have totally devoured the bird. By late afternoon, the school group finally pulls up to their hotel. The teacher asks the class representative to keep a close eye on everyone while she heads inside to fetch the room keys. Mia tells her fans they have to wait outside, but then she spots Arthur sitting all by himself in the corner. He is scrolling through the class group chat, and that is when he notices Sophie has finally updated her profile picture. Suddenly, Mia sneaks up behind him, catching him totally off guard, and asks why he is staring so intensely at his phone. Even with the glare on the screen, she manages to catch a glimpse of the photo he was looking at. She demands to know who the girl is, and trust me, you and I are about to see him completely lose his cool. All right, you and I are diving into a world where status is everything, starting with this suspicious noble lady. Arthur claims he is only looking at group portraits, but Lady Beatrice does not believe a word the boy says. She demands he hand over his enchanted slate, but soon another girl calls Beatrice away to watch their peers practicing. Beatrice decides to film her friends, but warns the young lord that she will be seeing him again later. Arthur panics, wondering why she is so suspicious when everyone at the academy is already in these social groups. Suddenly, the manipulative Cedric appears, claiming he has been searching for Arthur for a long time to discuss their deal. Arthur follows the House representative to a hidden chamber, where Cedric reveals a bag full of illegal elixirs and spirits. He claims most of their peers brought drinks, and they are planning a massive secret feast for the whole class. Now pay attention here, Cedric needs a scapegoat, and he has chosen our poor protagonist for the job. He tells Arthur that even if he gets caught, the whole class will treat him like a hero for his sacrifice. Arthur refuses to help, but as he tries to leave, Cedric mentions the noble girls who will attend the party. He knows Arthur has a crush on Lady Alina, and promises that every lady in the class was invited. Our hero freezes, wondering if Alina will really attend this forbidden event and wanting a chance to see her. Arthur falls for the manipulation and takes the heavy satchel just as the headmistress arrives for the student check-in. She gathers the students for their room keys and introduces a new assistant teacher who is there to guide them. You saw that look too, right? Beatrice is still staring at Arthur like she knows something is wrong. Sitting in silence, Arthur notices the girl's suspicious gaze, while his friend Julian asks why he is acting so nervous. Arthur denies everything, but Julian shows off a deck of smuggled cards to prove he is also a rebel. Not wanting to be outdone, Arthur decides to show his friend the forbidden spirits hidden inside his own heavy pack. Julian panics and starts shouting in shock, making Arthur desperate to quiet him before the master notices their stash. It is too late, as the assistant master approaches and demands to see exactly what is inside the boy's backpack. In a private room, the master looks deeply disappointed and asks if this is the entire hoard he brought. With sadness in his eyes, Arthur admits it is all he has, feeling his reputation at the academy crumble. The master vows to handle this back at the academy and orders him to prepare to bring his parents in. Terrified of his mother's wrath, Arthur leaves the room and immediately runs into Cedric waiting in the hallway. The snake hugs Arthur, acting worried while actually checking if the spirits were confiscated by the disappointed teachers. Cedric asks where the party should move to, completely ignoring that Arthur just took the fall for his scheme. He claims he will summon the boy later, once they find a safe place to gather the rest of the class. That night, Arthur sits alone, realizing he was played while everyone else is likely having fun with Lady Alina. By morning, the group gathers at the Great Citadel Tower to board the high-altitude sky carriages for their ride. Julian asks if it is his first flight, but Arthur is too distracted by Alina to even pay him attention. He wonders if Alina went out the night before, feeling like he is gradually drifting away from her noble world. Seeing Cedric acting like nothing happened makes Arthur's blood boil because the boy just used him from the start. He realizes he was just a tool for Cedric's schemes and doubts he will ever win Alina's heart today. Julian shouts to the whole group that Arthur is scared of heights, drawing every student's eye to the boy. Lady Alina smiles at him, saying it is her first time in a sky carriage too, which calms his nerves. Caught off guard by her kindness, Arthur starts stuttering and turns a bright shade of red in front of her. A friend asks Alina about the drink scandal, and the girl admits she was actually quite impressed by it. She calls him brave for not being scared of the masters, making Arthur's heart skip a beat with joy. It is the first time she has shown real interest in him, and Arthur feels embarrassed but absolutely incredible. Inside the carriage, he starts planning how to keep the conversation going to stay by the young lady's side. He believes this trip might actually be his chance to finally win her noble hand and get closer. Suddenly, their crystals buzz with a warning about a mysterious plague spreading through the capital city right now. A raven crashes into the glass with terrifying force, followed by a swarm of infected birds attacking the carriage. Trust me, as the plague spreads through the carriage, the students can only watch in pure horror. Wild, right? All right, stick with me, because you and I are about to see Arthur notice some disgusting eggs on a pigeon. A strange egg slips through the cracked glass into the cable car, sending the students into an immediate panic. In all the commotion, Arthur accidentally stomps on Sophie's foot and quickly tries to apologize to her. He's incredibly nervous being this close to her, while Mrs. Thorne shouts at the class to settle down. One boy creeps closer to the mysterious egg, noticing that the damn thing is actually starting to move. The lift finally docks at the high spire, but the staff is baffled by the disgusting mess on the glass. They usher the group out, while Hannah starts filming the bizarre scene for her followers to see. She records her arrival at the summit, sensing that something is very, very wrong with this place. Arthur lingers inside the car, thinking this is his only chance to finally talk to Sophie properly. He knows that, if he leaves now, he might never get another chance to fix things between the two of them. He tries apologizing for the foot incident again, and Sophie tells him it is totally fine. To break the awkward silence, he mentions the birds and asks if the ride is always this rough. Sophie asks if he has something real to say, but just as he opens his mouth, a blood-curdling scream rings out from outside. Pay attention here, because you and I are about to watch a student collapse as the first scream rings out. A boy standing nearby realizes with horror that the strange substance is already sticking to his leg. The girl screams as the eggs fuse to her skin like some kind of living, pulsing parasite. She desperately bashes her leg with her bag, while her friends flee in pure terror. She tumbles down the stairs, and her classmates rush over to help her back up. They freeze when they see her face. It is splattered with those disgusting, pulsating monster eggs. A guard comes to help, but the girl grabs his arm, begging him to save her. The infection jumps to his skin instantly, and the man bolts away in a blind, frantic panic. Terrified, the remaining students scramble back inside the safety of the cable car. Looking through the glass, they watch their friend being slowly consumed by the horrifying and growing biomass. Hannah tries to help, but a classmate stops her from reaching the monster outside. She snaps at him, refusing to believe her best friend has become a creature. Suddenly, the infected girl slams against the window, sobbing and screaming for help. Downstairs at the entrance, Mrs. Thorne asks a security guard where the rest of her students went. He points to the stairs, just as a wave of panicked teenagers rushes past them. The teacher finds a student on the floor and asks if she is all right. It's a trap. The girl is infected and Mrs. Thorne is caught in her grip. Inside the car, students huddle in the corner, too scared to even look outside. One boy peeks out and loses it, sending the whole group into a fresh, screaming frenzy. Arthur's skin is crawling. He sees Sophie shaking and asks if she is holding up. And trust me, you and I saw this coming, as an emergency phone alert warns everyone of a citywide virus. Total chaos erupts at the spire. Kids are calling home, crying for their parents. Then, one boy notices the girl outside has started moving again. They hope she's recovered, and the boy tells Arthur to go check on her. Arthur cautiously steps toward the glass to see if Sophie's friend is still alive. He asks if she's all right, but the girl just stands there in eerie silence. Someone tells him to shout louder. Then, a second emergency alert hits their phones. When Arthur looks back at the girl, he realizes she looks absolutely terrifying. More survivors scramble up the stairs, only to run right into the infected student. She lunges, tearing into the man as the boys watch the carnage in horror. The dying man tells his friend to run, while he tries to hold her back. So, what do you and I think? Is there even a chance for Kevin and the others to get out alive? Arthur sees the danger and bolts the door for everyone's safety. All right, you and I are about to witness the nightmare. A man outside bangs on the door begging for mercy, but the blighted creature attacks him while the students watch. The squires watch in total shock as Arthur freezes, seeing exactly what his own classmate has now become. Soon, commoners climbing the tower near the gondola lines run straight into the student who has been infected. The creature hunts them down, while a dead bird that hit the carriage suddenly twitches back to life. Now watch closely, because Kieran is panicking. One of the boys covers his mouth to keep him silent and safe. To avoid the monster, Maeve starts sobbing for the man they left, but Arthur snaps that opening the door meant death. Opening that door would have killed them all. Another squire opens the carriage roof, suggesting they use it to escape. They want to run, but his friend replies that they would never outrun that monster in the open. Arthur notices Sophie is trembling, and she asks if he has something to say since he keeps staring at her. He gets nervous and stammers that he was merely wondering if she was all right during all this chaos. She says she is fine and tells him to stop staring. Arthur warns that leaving the carriage is far too dangerous. He insists they must wait for the royal guard, but another girl tells him to stop barking orders at them. She yells that he has no right to lead after he abandoned their friend Gil just to save his own life. Arthur is furious, asking why she is pinning the blame on him for a choice they were all forced to make. She insists he is guilty for stopping them from helping, but the boy shouts that he did what was best. You and I see the group falling apart, but the fighting stops when a voice crackles through the communication crystal. The tower identifies themselves, and the gondola begins to move. Meanwhile, Maeve tries to reach the other squads. She attempts to use the magic link to find their friends, but only cold silence answers her call. Sophie starts crying for her friends, but Arthur warns they cannot worry about others with the whole city falling. He promises to take her home once they land, but suddenly, the carriage grinds to a complete halt. Confused, they use the crystal to alert the tower, and the gondola starts moving toward the station again. They finally reach the building, but the relief is short-lived as they realize the station is crawling with undead. The teenagers scream at the carnage, waiting for them, as they finally pull the carriage into the infected dock. Sophie spots a shadow on the glass, a blighted monster that breaks through and crawls inside. The students kick at the windows to escape before the infected monster can fully enter the cramped space. The creature crawls inside, but the students finally shatter the glass and leap out to the stone floor. The monster continues the chase, and in the chaos, Sophie trips and hits the ground hard. Arthur turns back to save her, and together they sprint down the tower stairs to escape the horror. Below, they find a scene of horror, and Sophie begs for a moment because her leg is badly injured. Arthur asks if it was his fault, but she tells him not to worry about the bleeding wound. Suddenly, their classmates come charging back up the stairs, their faces pale with pure, unadulterated terror. Arthur asks why they are retreating, and a boy screams that the ground floor is swarming with monsters. They find a floor that seems clear, but the monster from the carriage is still tracking Sophie's blood. The students use their crystals to contact home, while Kieran sees the magic network is full of reports. Everyone on the scrying record is talking about the monsters, and Arthur manages to reach his mother. He tells her he is trapped on the second floor of the station tower, and she begs him to stay safe. The girls help clean Sophie's bleeding wounds, while Kieran asks if Arthur has any spare gold coins. He wants to use the refreshment stand, but Arthur just asks if his friend is mentally all right. The boy regrets ever coming on this trip, while Arthur realizes he actually managed to protect Sophie. But then, the young man finds the blood trail Sophie left and decides to follow the red path. He turns the corner and finds the creature sniffing out the blood like a hungry, blighted hound. The infected lunges at the young squire, but Arthur barely manages to dodge the deadly strike. The students bolt toward the exit in a panic, and Kieran desperately tries to bolt the door behind him. Beck forces the door open, and trust me, you and I are about to see this coward get exactly what he deserves. The argument is cut short when the squires realize they've looped back to the tower's magical lift. Every floor connects to the same exit, meaning they just ran in a useless circle. It is beyond frustrating. Elena reaches her allies, completely winded from the climb, only to realize they've made a terrible mistake. The other noble girls were left below. Sarah and Margaret are still trapped on the lower floor, hiding from that beast. One wonders if they should stay put, while the other whispers that the monster is blind. They just need to stay silent. Sarah chokes back a scream from her leg wound, but the cursed one can still smell the scent of fresh blood. The boys rush back down to save their friends, while the beast creeps closer and closer to Sarah's hiding spot. Just as it lunges, Arthur appears, drawing its gaze. Stick with me here because his plan is about to get wild. The monster charges, missing Arthur by an inch as he lures the infected back toward the lift's heavy iron doors. He slams the gate shut to buy time, then stops, gasping for air and wondering if that nightmare stopped the chase. He descends the stone stairs, heart pounding as he second-guesses the insane risk he just took to save the others. When he finally reaches the bottom, the courtyard is empty. His friends are nowhere to be seen. He has been abandoned. Through the narrow window, Arthur sees the group escaping through the castle gates. Sarah spots him but looks away. She leaves him behind. Arthur takes a shaky breath, trying to understand why his own allies would just discard him like trash. He tries using his sending stone to reach them, shouting that he is still trapped, but a royal alert suddenly interrupts. The stone glows with news of another disaster, as he hears a strange noise coming from the men's washroom. It is Cedric, another squire left for dead, huddled in the dark and wondering if this is where he finally dies. Arthur asks if he was abandoned too. Cedric scoffs, claiming he's the one who left them because they were just too annoying. Relieved to find a familiar face, Arthur pulls him into a hug. "It is good to see you," he sighs with relief. They scan the halls, and Arthur whispers that the cursed beast seems to have vanished from this level for now. Cedric insists they bolt the door, terrified it will return. "You and I both know that door won't hold for long." Arthur stares at the shattered window the others used to flee. Cedric asks if he knows which way the cowards went. Arthur points toward the courtyard. Cedric spits in fury. They left them like garbage, even knowing the monsters were swarming the gates. There's no escape that way anymore. The courtyard is a death trap, crawling with those things, and they're stuck right here. Arthur points out that Cedric only stayed behind because he was too scared to make the jump with the others. The two boys sit in the dark, catching their breath. Cedric asks how long they've been hiding in this miserable tower. Arthur says it's been about an hour. He tries the sending stone again, but the royal line is busy with screams. Cedric starts to panic, but Arthur tells him to stay calm. His noble parents must be sending a rescue party by now. Cedric just shakes his head. His parents couldn't stop this nightmare even if they tried. They are on their own now. The sending stone flashes a new decree. The capital is under siege, and the king has declared a state of martial law. The royal guard is seizing the roads and fortified keeps. They're moving fast to contain the plague before the kingdom falls. Scholars say this is the first time the iron laws have been invoked in over 40 years. Things are grim. Cedric loses it when he hears the news. Their situation just went from bad to absolutely hopeless in seconds. Through the window, Arthur sees a nearby tavern engulfed in flames. A team of fire mages is already racing to the scene. Cedric doesn't care. "They aren't coming for us," he snarls. If he could, he'd just burn this whole cursed world down. Hearing that, an idea sparks in Arthur's mind. To get rescued, they need to light a signal fire, a big one. He searches a wooden bin for anything that will burn. Cedric watches, wondering if his friend has finally lost his mind too. Arthur explains that if they set the tower ablaze, the fire mages will have no choice but to save them. He finds a flint striker in the trash, but it is rusted and won't catch. He keeps trying, desperation setting in. His clicking is cut short by a familiar shadow. That same infected beast is standing right there in the corridor again. The creature just stands there, unmoving. Arthur whispers that it won't attack yet, but it is watching them with cold eyes. It looks bigger than before, pulsing with dark energy. Seeing that rotting flesh, Cedric looks like he's about to retch. He asks if they're really going through with the fire. Arthur nods. It's their only chance to signal for help. Arthur decides to head back to the lift floor. If they light the fire below, the smoke will choke them to death. He tells Cedric they need to reach the second floor. Trust me, you and I are in for one hell of a ride. Leo and Arthur realize each floor of the tower has its own exit. One baits the monster while the other sneaks in. The plan is to torch the third level. Since it is outdoors, the fire will spread fast without any water to stop it. Stick with me, because you and I are about to watch Leo take on a job that goes south incredibly fast. Leo starts lighting the parchments upstairs, but suddenly, a grotesque creature crawls right onto the roof of the clockwork lift. Panicking, the boy tosses a flaming bag at the beast, accidentally setting the whole wooden platform ablaze in the process. Arthur sends a magical voice, warning him that the ghouls from the lower floors are already swarming up the stairs. Leo realizes he is trapped. The fire he started to kill the monster has completely blocked his only way back down. Arthur screams for him to move, but as Leo turns, he sees the blighted ghouls closing in on his position. Now Leo is caught between a wall of fire and a hungry monster. Trust me, this situation is absolutely terrifying. He frantically tries to smother the flames with his tunic, but the creature lunges, forcing him toward the tower ledge. Remembering that fire is their only weakness, Leo prepares to throw his burning clothes as a final, desperate weapon. The wind catches the fabric, making him miss, and now the beast is closing the gap with nothing stopping it. Suddenly, Arthur arrives, pelting the creature with fireballs made of burning parchment to buy Leo a few precious seconds. Seeing the opening, Leo yells for his friend to run as they both charge down the building's stone steps. During the frantic escape, Arthur trips and falls right next to a patch of the infectious slime that started this. Leo pulls him up, but Arthur snaps, blaming Leo's reckless plan for nearly getting them both killed in the fire. Leo fires back, calling Arthur a coward who was too terrified to even help his noble friends escape earlier today. He shouts that it is pathetic for Arthur to act tough when he was actually just too scared to jump. Their shouting match is cut short when a ghoul starts climbing the stairs, forcing them to duck into a room. They slam the door shut, but the monster is relentless, trying to squeeze its rotting body through the narrow gaps. I know what you're thinking, they are safe, right? Well, look at the windows. Ghouls are literally everywhere now. Leo realizes the entire building is surrounded, and every single monster in the area is trying to force its way in. Spotting an alarm rune, Leo gets a desperate idea and tells Arthur to find anything that can burn immediately. One of the creatures smashes through a window to get to them, as Arthur frantically searches for something to use. In a surge of adrenaline, Arthur hurls a heavy pot at the beast, knocking it back and feeling a sudden confidence. He starts mocking Leo, bragging that he is not the scared puppy or the clumsy amateur everyone thinks he is. But while Arthur is busy gloating, he does not see the second monster rising up directly behind him for the kill. Leo tries to scream a warning, but the beast strikes, and Arthur is left howling for help as it attacks. Desperate to save his friend, Leo struggles with his firestone while a second ghoul forces its way through the door. He finally lights a plant and swings it, smashing the fire into the monster's face to keep it at bay. Seeing the beast recoil proves he was right. Fire, truly, is the only way to destroy these nightmare creatures. As the infected weakens, Leo makes a horrific choice and throws the entire burning plant onto the struggling pair. He watches in tears as Arthur is consumed by the flames along with the monster, sobbing over his friend's fate. The horror does not end there, as more ghouls continue to flood into the building from every possible entrance. Across the kingdom, Sarah talks to her viewers through a magic crystal, asking if the people are still holding on. Clara questions her for using the crystal during an apocalypse, but Sarah explains she is just trying to find survivors. She tells her followers that their entire noble class was decimated, leaving only the small group on this carriage. A viewer comments that these ghouls have cores, referencing a magical warning telling people to be careful with those monsters. Someone asks if they are near the Grand Gate, and Sarah wonders why that location is so important right now. Proclamations say there is a temporary sanctuary at the gate for anyone fleeing the blighted parts of the city. The students are stunned by the news, realizing there might actually be a safe place left in this hellscape. The viewer explains that while most of Silverport is barricaded, the carriages might still reach the Grand Gate. Sarah thanks them, but Clara suddenly tells everyone to duck because a creature is right outside the carriage window. The monster stands perfectly still, staring at the carriage while the kids pray it does not hear their frantic breathing. And that is where we leave it for today. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see what happens next. Stick with me. The students are stranded on the road, planning a 30-minute trek to Kingsbridge Station. The wilderness is crawling with shadows, so one girl interrupts to ask about Arthur, since they can't leave him. During their escape, she saw him watching from the tower's upper floor, likely praying for them to come back. But Barnaby snaps that it's a suicide mission. He insists they push straight for the station, prioritizing their own survival. He was ready to abandon our hero, assuming he was already dead. Meanwhile, back at the sky coach spire, everything is burning. Arthur collapses as thick smoke fills his lungs. The magical alarms scream, but the fire is far too intense to stop. As the heat rises, Arthur notices those eerie, glowing eggs still clutched in his hand. But then, he loses consciousness. Darkness takes him, but not before he hears distant sirens. Elsewhere, the students creep through the silent, haunted city streets. They move like ghosts to avoid the blighted. Barnaby finds an abandoned carriage and barks at the others to get inside. Hazel asks how fast this thing can go. Barnaby replies that its top speed is 120 kilometers per hour. Hannah stumbles into the carriage, completely drained. Seeing her friend's pale face, Hazel rushes over, asking if she is okay. Hannah admits she's terrified of another disaster like the sky coach. She begs the group to just stay put for a moment. Barnaby snaps that she can stay behind. He's sick of being slowed down by weaklings who do nothing but complain. Hearing her whine makes him want to lash out. Hazel tries to intervene, telling him to show his friends some respect. As they bicker, Selena is still suffering, her wounds looking worse. Miller steps in, suggesting she finally take a seat. He tells her to rest because she's clearly unwell. Selena looks up, confused, asking Miller what he's searching for. He pulls something from under the seats, an emergency hammer. Miller realizes these could be useful weapons for their journey. He's determined to be ready if things go south again. No more being helpless like they were during the Spire disaster. He hands one of the iron hammers to Selena. It's a small comfort, but at least she can fight now. Barnaby orders them to move while they still can. The group pushes forward, sneaking through the shadows of the abandoned line. Now pay attention here. Inside a nearby tavern, a mysterious figure is watching Barnaby's every move from the shadows. He reaches for the door of the last carriage, looking for food. Suddenly, a voice hisses a warning to stop immediately. There are monsters trapped inside. Terrified, Barnaby bolts back. The tavern door swings open, and a stranger beckons them in. He tells them to hurry inside before the blighted catch them. The area is crawling with infected, and time is out. They scramble into the tavern, gasping for air. By some miracle, they find classmates who vanished during the initial Spire chaos. Arthur finds himself in a pitch-black void. Suddenly, a terrifying, blighted shadow lunges right at him from the gloom. He swings a burning branch to defend himself, but he freezes when he realizes the monster is his old friend, Julian. Now we can breathe again, Arthur bolts awake from that nightmare. A man enters, saying they have a long day ahead. He stops, surprised to see the boy finally awake from his coma. He mentions they have a very busy day planned. He asks if Arthur's hand feels better. He hands over a form, explaining a royal agent will show him around soon. Arthur begins filling out the official paperwork. The man tells him he just needs a way to contact his family now. He mentions how lucky the boy is. Most people trapped in that zone never make it out, let alone get rescued. Arthur asks who these people are and what they're doing. The man decides it's time to show him the entire facility. This place used to be a grand arena for games. Now, it's been converted into a massive emergency shelter for survivors. Arthur looks at the rescue workers and asks the big question: can they send a team back for the others? The man shakes his head. The city is under total lockdown. They've sealed the gates to stop the blight from spreading. Arthur realizes he's stuck here. He focuses on finishing the forms so the agent can finally show him the rest. Arthur realizes he survived despite his blighted hand. He stares at it, wondering how this miracle was even possible. A familiar voice calls out his name. A student runs up, desperately asking Arthur what happened to the rest of them. It's Cedric and his crew. They're relieved to see a friendly face. One of them looks like he's about to speak. He clearly wants to ask Arthur something important, but he stops. It's just too difficult to explain given the current situation. Instead, he asks if Arthur has reached his family. Arthur finally gets through to his mother, his voice trembling as he speaks. He tells her he's safe in the refuge. On the other end, his mother breaks down, overwhelmed with relief and joy. She thought he was gone forever. Arthur keeps repeating that he's okay, but his mother just cannot stop her crying. You and I can only hope for the best as Arthur visits a healer. The doctor tries to reassure him about his burns. The physician assures him the burns are shallow, and he can rest while they heal slowly over time. All right, you and I are about to see just how deep betrayal cuts in this kingdom. As the healer leaves, Arthur seethes with rage. How could Alina abandon him while he was trapped like that? Meanwhile, at the general store, the students plan their path to the citadel as a family remains trapped nearby. A child screams in terror at the monsters outside, just as a magical broadcast announces the king's rescue efforts. The messengers report that the royal guard is mobilizing every night to save the survivors of the blight. The news grows darker as emergency measures are declared. In the shop, the group listens intently to the decree. They wonder how they will ever reach the safe zone, as the report describes the growing disaster. The corruption has reached level 4. Damage is severe, and the entire region is falling into total chaos. The broadcast ends with a plea for cooperation, promising that those in the danger zones will be rescued soon. Now pay attention, because here is where the tension starts building between our survivors. The shopkeeper hands out some cider and asks what happened to the other students on their academy trip. She seems deeply worried. Julian checks his tracking crystal and notes they are in a level 2 danger zone. A girl wonders what horrors await in level 4 areas, but Alina is too distracted to even listen. She is lost in thought until Julian suggests they make a break for the central citadel immediately. One girl asks why they should leave when the messengers told them to stay put and wait for rescue. Julian snaps back that they have no idea when, or if, the king's knights will ever arrive for them. Another student cries that she cannot reach her parents and fears the worst has happened to her family. Her friends try to comfort her, claiming the magical signal is just weak in this part of the village. Alina stares at her crystal, trying to find the courage to call Arthur, but he is no longer answering. Guilt eats at her for leaving him behind after he saved her life. She prays he is still alive. Helena decides to start a vision stream to talk with her followers, since her viewer count is skyrocketing. You feel that too, right? That weird sense of dread when someone cares more about fame than survival. She tells her audience that the shopkeeper saved them, but a man nearby clearly hates the broadcast. Helena invites Beatrice to join the stream, but gets a middle finger in response from the annoyed teenager. The young woman then tries to interview the owner, but the man demands she turn that crystal off. He shouts that this is no time for laughing and chatting, while the world outside is literally ending. Helena refuses to stop. The man stands up in a fury, ordering her to shut it down right now. Beatrice steps in to protect her friend, asking the man what he plans to do if she keeps filming. The store owner intervenes, scolding the man for his temper and for being so rude to the youngsters. The man gives up and sits back down, muttering that the teenagers are nothing but arrogant idiots. Beatrice tells Helena she was stupid to start a stream when everyone's nerves are clearly fried. Helena bursts into tears, claiming she was just trying to lighten the heavy mood for everyone there. She weeps that if they die, she wants there to be a record of what they all endured. Her friends rush to comfort her as Beatrice returns to the window to watch the dark streets. She jumps when a shadow moves outside, but it is only a stray cat looking for a meal. The owner opens the door to feed it, ignoring a man's complaints about bringing stray animals inside. She snaps back that it is her shop and she will let in whoever, or whatever, she wants. The students take a moment to pet the cat, while the owner looks out into the gloom. She sighs, wondering what happened to the poor boy who always used to walk with that feline. Nearby, a second cat encounters a corrupted pigeon as the students prepare to head for the citadel. Julian invites the woman along, saying the map shows the station is only 20 minutes away. The owner declines, knowing she would only slow them down on roads crawling with shadow monsters. The students realize they cannot make it on foot. Suddenly, a man mentions he is a carriage driver. And that is where we leave it. Trust me, you and I are about to see a wild ride. Let's dive into a world where the only thing hotter than the fire is the sheer terror of the blighted. The shadow-cursed roam the valley, so the innkeeper asks for wine to steady their nerves before the night takes action. Sir Alistair grabs the bottles, explaining he'll craft fire flasks using his old frontline alchemy skills he learned in the army. He knows these monsters fear the flame, and the young lords agree it is a solid plan because the blighted hate fire. Throwing them from a distance keeps them safe, while Alistair starts brewing the volatile concoctions as a girl named Alara suddenly helps. The knight snaps that war is not a game and questions why a child like her would offer such a dangerous thing. She bows her head in apology, admitting she completely misjudged the situation and misunderstood his intentions from the very start. Alistair softens, noting that even nobles can be foolish, and apologizes for being so harsh with her earlier in the day. Alara then wonders if they met during the St. Jude's pilgrimage, mentioning she saw him and his lady recording some memories. Now pay attention here. The past is finally catching up with our survivors through old memories of that tragic holy pilgrimage. The knight falls silent as Alara apologizes for mentioning the woman who was traveling by his side during that trip. Alistair explains the woman was his betrothed, and Alara begins to weep for the many friends she lost during that journey. Master Cedric asks why she's arguing again, but she insists he doesn't need to worry because she has found an ally. She suggests Cedric should also make friends with the knight, but the stubborn boy doesn't care and flatly refuses to befriend him. Alara claims Alistair is a good man despite his rudeness, while the knight asks if the two teenagers are actually friends. She explains they were close until their middle studies, while the carriage driver takes a moment to call his young daughter. Captain Arthur tells his girl to listen to her mother, promising that he will be back home to see her very soon. Martha the innkeeper smiles, saying it is good to know that a father will finally reunite with his beloved little girl. Arthur swears he will do whatever it takes to see her again, just as Alara returns with the finished fire flasks. Alistair warns that handling these things is dangerous, and says he should be the one to throw most of the alchemy fire. But Cedric says he will throw them, because he is the kind of person who simply doesn't trust anyone else's aim. The knight warns them about the danger of the oil dripping onto their hands if they are not careful with them. Cedric scoffs, saying he doesn't care about his hands because there are much worse things waiting for them outside the door. He says each survivor should throw their own, so Alistair decides to give a fire flask to every member of the group. The knight offers to take the innkeeper's place, but Martha refuses to leave her restaurant because she thinks it is too dangerous. Alara tries to convince the old woman to go with them, but she insists on staying behind in her safe haven. Alastair warns her of the danger, yet she insists she will be fine because she has been in this tavern for 30 years. The group promises to send a royal rescue team as soon as they reach a safe location far away from here. You and I both saw that coming, right? Time for the first big test against the monsters waiting in the street. A shadow-cursed creature lunges, and their first fire flask erupts into a blaze that immediately deals massive damage to the beast. Seeing the plan work, Alastair orders them to check their supplies, while Cedric turns his cold gaze toward Lady Ysabel. He tells her he is sick of dealing with useless people and will leave her behind if she becomes a burden. Ysabel wonders if he is only bitter because of her leg injuries, or if it is because of young Woe. Captain Arthur tells her to take care of her beautiful legs as the group finally decides to put their plan into action. Martha remains at the door, telling the students to be careful as they run toward the carriage waiting in the distance. Alastair tells the teenagers to stay close and explains that the flasks should be thrown on the ground to ensure they break. A monster blocks their path, but the young man manages to throw a fire flask, turning the nightmare into a burning torch. The innkeeper watches from a distance and spots a lost cat, opening her door to let the poor animal inside. However, the feline starts vomiting up a blighted bird it had eaten earlier, showing the rot is already deep inside. Meanwhile, the group continues using their fire flasks to reach the carriage, with Cedric warning that he has used 4 bombs. Min tells the others to be careful, while the driver points toward his blue carriage that is parked just up ahead. A monster suddenly startles the knight, causing him to bump into Ysabel, but Cedric saves her with a well-timed fire flask. All the remaining fire flasks fall to the ground and shatter, leaving the young boy feeling extremely irritated and angry. Alastair tells the young man to calm down, because all the monsters in the area have already been burned to ash. Now, what do you and I make of this boy? All right, you and I are about to witness a journey through hell that starts with this coachman losing his temper during a heated argument. Silas, the driver, yells that he is not a friend to be spoken to so rudely, but the girls blame his sudden stop. The man claims he only fell because someone grabbed him, and Alara finally admits she was the one responsible before apologizing to everyone. The coachman turns away, but warns Arthur to stay alert while Cedric approaches to check on the boy, who simply ignores him and walks. Silas tells Serafina not to worry about the lost supplies, since they can craft more fire flasks later as they continue their dangerous trek. Suddenly, the local shopkeeper screams at them to run for their lives, and the confused teenagers start sprinting without knowing what is coming. They quickly realize a blighted shadow beast is hunting them, and the creature pounces on the poor woman, pinning her to the cold ground. As the animal begins to infect the lady, the coachman leaps into the carriage and frantically orders everyone to scramble inside before it is too late. Arthur tries to salvage the remaining fire flasks while the driver rushes him, but as the others reach the carriage, they find the door bolted. The boy screams at the man to open up since people are still trapped outside, but Silas refuses to take any more risks for them. Now pay attention, because this is the moment where the coward snaps the reins and Cedric tries to stop him from abandoning their friends. Enraged, the driver slaps the girl across her face and tells her to shut her mouth because he has a daughter waiting back home. Seeing this, Arthur becomes absolutely furious and swears he will kill the man if they ever meet again, while the others face the beasts. Those left behind are suddenly surrounded by a pack of blighted felines, and the man demands the final fire flask to defend the group. He tells the children to stay behind him since they only have 1 shot left and must wait for his signal to start running. As the cats charge, he tosses the fire flask just in time while over at the sanctuary, Liam tries to catch some rest during the peace. He wakes up in a total panic after a nightmare about those monsters and looks at his hand, wondering why it is hurting so badly. A knight arrives to check on him, but Liam reacts with sudden aggression before taking a deep breath and offering a sincere apology for it. Julian then hands the young man a crust of bread, explaining that they are distributing rations to all the survivors within the fortress walls. Chaos erupts nearby as citizens protest the administration's plan to let refugees into the sanctuary, leading to a massive tension between the social classes. Some of the newcomers are already making rude demands for ale and tobacco, making the atmosphere inside the refuge feel like a ticking time bomb. Julian jokes that the blight will spread even faster in here, and you and I both know that inside these walls, nowhere is safe. His friend asks what he is looking at, and the boy shows off some videos on his magic mirror to kill the sheer boredom. Julian then asks if the protagonist knows that some blights have souls, while others are just empty shells that merge with their host's body. Upon hearing this, the population begins calling this terrifying process fusion, just as a sentry appears looking for Liam to finalize his release. He leads the young man to his personal gear and tells him to sign the parchment so he can officially be on his way out. Liam realizes his magic mirror is completely out of mana, so the guard goes to find a charging stone while the teenager waits alone. In the same hallway, a man starts looking pale and unwell, just as the strange pain in the protagonist's hand begins to burn again. Walking through the halls, Liam remembers Julian's words and starts connecting the dots about the blight that fell from the 𝒐𝒗𝒊𝒗𝒐𝒓 earlier. He realizes the tower monsters and the corruption in his own hand were different from the cells found in the initial infection at the gate. Seraphina appears and asks what he is doing there, mentioning she visits this place often before noticing the bandages wrapped around his wounded palm. Liam explains he is just there to get his things, but the girl questions how he managed to burn himself while being totally alone. He questions her curiosity and suggests a magic surge might have caused it, but she clearly does not believe his weak explanation for a second. She suggests that someone might have set the fire on purpose, and Liam asks what she is implying with all these pointed, suspicious questions. Seraphina simply responds that she needs to know who she can actually trust, as the protagonist feels a sudden, sharp surge of intense agony. He describes the sensation as if thousands of white-hot needles are piercing his flesh, while the man in the corridor suddenly starts to vomit. He spews out thousands of those corrupted cells as a young man broadcasts shocking news about the total isolation of the capital city, 𝒐𝒗𝒊𝒗𝒐𝒓. He encourages the suffering people of the capital and begs those watching the mirror to shut off their magical fonts for their own safety. Immediately, someone comments on the live broadcast, accusing the man of just trying to stir up a panic with these wild, terrifying claims. And that is where we leave it, with a warning that could mean the absolute end of everything for the survivors inside the sanctuary. Trust me, you and I are watching a knight named Arthur as he hides a cursed hand from a worried young lady. He thinks about how the pain feels like 1,000 needles, just as a guard collapses in the hallway, retching dark magic. Watch closely now. A young herald suddenly announces that the isolation of Oakhaven has begun, and first, he addresses the kingdom. He begs the suffering citizens to seal their magic wells immediately, warning that the very water they drink has become a poison. It is a matter of life and death, though a skeptical noble accuses the messenger of just trying to incite a riot. Arthur blocks the trolls and snaps at the commenters, asking if they even realize how serious this live stream is. Stick with me, while he warns the world. Another guy named Julian just laughs at the screen with his friend. This idiot is back online again, Julian mocks, as Arthur continues his desperate broadcast to the public. He urges everyone to ignore the mainstream media and only trust the raw truth found on truth seekers. Julian just scoffs at the nonsense, but meanwhile, things are taking a dark turn over at the refuge. Someone has turned, and Arthur feels a sharp, burning pain in his own hand linked to the monster. Suddenly, a young man named Peter opens a door and finds himself face to face with a drooling beast. The creature groans that his stomach is on fire, snarling in frustration because Peter seems too frozen to help. Ilara bolts in terror, but Arthur rushes forward, determined to pull his friend away from the clutches of the zombie. Alara screams for him to stop, asking what he is doing, but Arthur refuses to leave a man behind. He tells her to find help immediately, while he tries to save their friend from becoming just another mindless snack. He shouts for Peter to hold on, but Alara just watches in horror, convinced that Arthur has finally lost it. Arthur spots a fire extinguisher on the floor and grabs it, his heart racing as he charges into the fray. He knows he is acting on pure impulse, but his conscience won't let him just run away and see nothing. The infected man groans again as Arthur approaches, trying to keep him calm by claiming a medical team is coming. But the monster has no patience left, cursing Arthur out and screaming that the boy has no idea how he feels. He rages that Arthur is clueless. The creature asks how he dares to tell him to stay calm, demanding to know if Arthur could handle this agony. Now watch this part carefully. The monster loses its mind and lunges straight for Arthur with a terrifying, bloodthirsty roar. Arthur blasts him with the fire extinguisher, but the zombie just snarls back, telling him to lay down and die. Just then, Alara reappears and blasts the beast with a high-pressure hose, sending the monster flying across the room. She sarcastically asks if he really thought a tiny fire extinguisher would work, mocking his heroics in the moment. Peter finally crawls out of his hiding spot, but it is too late. He looks like he has already been turned. Panic sets in as Peter stares at the blisters on his hands, realizing his life is effectively over in this instant. He begs for help just as the enforcers storm the hallway, weapons drawn as they order everyone to stay still. A terrified Alara swears they are clean, but the soldiers look past her and spot the monster in the shadows. One soldier identifies the creature as a Class C threat, just as the newly infected Peter steps forward, begging. The enforcers show zero mercy, setting both infected men on fire as Arthur watches the brutal execution in total shock. Arthur tries to protest the cruelty, but a soldier levels a gun at his chest and barks for them to move. Moments later, they are shivering in a tent at Checkpoint 3, wondering if they are actually safe or just caged. You and I saw that coming, but Alara is still shaken, realizing even the infected didn't deserve a fate that horrific. Arthur quietly apologizes, feeling the weight of the guilt for dragging her into this nightmare alongside him. Alara asks if he truly understands what he did, admitting she still has no idea what is going on. She demands to know why he would risk his life for a monster, asking if he actually has a death wish. Arthur admits he was just scared of losing a chance to get a phone charger, which was the whole reason. Alara calls his excuse absolute nonsense, but Arthur simply thanks her, surprised she actually came back for him. He tells her again how much it means that she didn't abandon him, but the mood is quickly ruined. She tells him he is giving her the chills, right as the doctors enter the tent to check on them. They apologize for the wait and thank the pair, but Alara just wants to know when they can leave. The doctor breaks the news that they must stay in quarantine first, and the two have no choice but to accept. It seems there won't be any more trouble for now, and they are told they can keep their belongings. Arthur tries to sit close to Alara, but she recoils in disgust, ordering him to stay far away from her. He claims he was just being thankful, but the doctor interrupts to ask for a look at Arthur's injured hand. The doctor politely asks him to remove the bandages, a simple request that sends a visible wave of shock through him. The doctor peels back the gauze, asking if his burns were treated. Trust me, it gets wild. Our protagonist claims he was checked. The physician apologizes, saying it is just the Crown's health protocol. Arthur plays it cool, but you and I know he is hiding a dark secret beneath that bandage. He saw the black rot in his own flesh. If the healer says he is clean, why is he still terrified? Outside, the commoners are rioting in the quarantine ward. One man tries to calm the storm, but another shoves him aside. Move, we are not staying here to die, they manage to burst out. They do not get far. A wall of steel, the king's guardians, blocks the only exit. None shall leave, the captain barks, but the desperate crowd is too far gone to listen. Cedric grabs young Julian's arm. You want to die? Stay quiet and stay put. Look around, kid. No beasts here. You really want to end up like those poor souls in the barrens. If we get lost out there, we are as good as dead. We stay or we perish. The logic hits home. The mob settles, and they are ushered back into the cold stone halls. The guardians seal the iron gates. Now, pay attention. The stakes are about to skyrocket for everyone. One lad snaps, screaming about a monster inside. A woman begs for the mercy of the fresh air. The captain warns them. Leaving now is suicide. The blight level in the capital has hit Tier 3. That is the same death rating as the Great River. It is the most dangerous zone in the kingdom. As for the monster inside, it has been dealt with. They are scrubbing the halls now. Do not panic, they say. We are taking every precaution. They just need everyone to fall in line. Step back from the gates. Cooperate, or the risks for everyone in this room will only multiply. In the chaos, a noblewoman stumbles into a commoner. She is frantic, stumbling over an apology. He tells her to watch it, but when she sees his face, her eyes go wide with horror. "A beggar," she shrieks. "Why is this filth touching me?" The disgust is written all over her. She demands the guards drag him away. "Don't come near me, you will ruin everything." She cowers behind another person. "Don't touch me either, I have been tainted by that wretch." The man loses it, he rips off his shirt. "Do I look blighted? Strip then, show your skin." The guards have to break them apart. Cedric just watches the whole situation and laughs. Now you and I are heading back to Arthur and Alina. Things are getting quiet, too quiet. Arthur sees his chance. He ducks away from the others, claiming he needs a moment of privacy. Alone at last, he unwraps the bandage. He is bracing for the worst, looking for the infection. It is gone. His skin is clear. He stares, wondering if the rot is just hiding deeper. He panics for a second. Did the corruption survive the fire? But his body feels strangely normal. No fever, no pain. And nobody he has touched has turned yet. Maybe he is actually safe. He needs to know his true condition. Until then, no physical contact with anyone, period. Suddenly, Alina appears. "Where were you? And why did you lie about your hand, Arthur?" He tries to play it off, but she is sharp. She remembers him saying it was badly burned. He lies again. It is already healed. She is not buying a single word he is saying. "You had a bandage thick as a shield," she spits. "There should be a scar at least." They rejoin the survivors. Arthur waits for the telltale throbbing in his palm. Nothing, no monsters here. Alina leans in close. "If you are trying to fool me, Arthur, I will kill you myself." The guards haul in a new group. Suddenly, Arthur's hand starts to pulse. He feels it. Someone in this new crowd is carrying the rot. The danger just walked through the door. The officials announce a new protocol. Everyone needs to keep their distance to stay alive. Cedric and his mate just laugh. Distance? In this crowded pit, they have lost their minds. Suddenly, their message crystals light up. A transmission from their old squad has arrived. Their friend is at the peak of St. Nansen's. She is up high with the wealthy travelers. Smart move, heading for the clouds instead of the gutters. Stick around, this is about to get wild. All right, you and I are diving into a world where Arthur wonders how a new survivor is triggering a sudden pain in his hand. Arthur sends a frantic message across the mononet, desperate for any word on where the rest of his academy classmates ended up. Inside the sanctuary, the commoners are screaming that the quarantine is a joke, and they won't stay silent while a plague-bearer hides among them. The commoners threaten to sue the crown if they aren't moved to safety, as the tension in the sanctuary reaches its absolute limit. A knight steps forward to announce that royal alchemists are investigating, blaming the outbreak on a stray, infected rat that slipped into the ward. Arthur whispers to Alina that they didn't see a single rodent in that corridor, but the girl just gives him a knowing, bitter look. She scoffs, telling him the High Council would never admit their own guards, let an infected commoner walk right through the front gates. But our protagonist points out that people are transforming into monsters without any contact at all, suggesting the curse might just be dormant. Alina warns him that if he takes those crazy theories to the officials, they'll just throw him in a dungeon for spreading absolute nonsense. Frustrated, Arthur mutters that he should have known better than to ask for a noble girl's opinion, but then something unexpected happens. Surprisingly, she hands him a monocrystal to charge his device, showing a rare moment of kindness in the middle of all this chaos. He thanks her, only to get a rude gesture in return as he finally plugs his communication stone into the glowing power source. Now here's the thing you and I need to watch. Alener wasn't always this helpful back at the academy. The teacher had paired them up, but Alener looked like she'd rather be fighting dragons than spending a single minute on his team. As Arthur and Julian walked past, he could hear the other students whispering nasty rumors about the girl behind her back. Yet, after she shared her crystal, he starts to think that maybe she isn't the cold-hearted ice queen everyone made her out to be. Nearby, some noblewomen are gossiping about a man who arrived recently, a mysterious survivor who is supposedly completely immune to the dark curse. Rumor has it he hunts monsters with his bare hands and has survived multiple scratches without turning into a beast himself. They claim this legend was touched by the rot and stayed perfectly human, which sounds like something straight out of a fairy tale. One woman insists he grabbed her hand, promising that if danger ever truly approached, the heavens themselves would send a warning. Apparently, this saint is currently volunteering in the supply tents, leaving Arthur stunned that such a person actually exists in this hell. Arthur is stunned to learn that a truly immune person actually exists. Suddenly, a carriage driver approaches him, asking to borrow the monocrystal, and Arthur checks for Alener before nodding his head. He uses the last bit of power to call his mother, begging her to stay safe behind the city walls until this nightmare ends. After hanging up, the driver apologizes for overhearing part of the boys' private family conversation. Arthur says it's fine, explaining that he's only stuck here because of a school trip that went horribly wrong at the worst time. The man sighs, noting how difficult it will be for any guardian to reach this place, but he understands that's just how parents are. He mentions his own daughter, swearing that if she were in trouble, he'd ride 1,000 miles to the capital just to find her. His little girl is young and currently stuck in a healer's ward, fighting an illness that has kept her bedridden. Arthur shares that he was also a sickly child, spending his days alone in a quiet hospital room waiting for his mother to return. He tells the man his daughter will surely recover for certain, and the driver smiles warmly, thanking him for the power and those kind words. Then he asks if Arthur arrived with the other refugees who were fleeing the total destruction of the neighboring northern duchy of 𝒂𝒐𝒔𝒕. But before Arthur can answer, the driver is pulled away by the static on his device, desperately trying to hear his daughter's voice. And let's pause. Is Arthur's mysterious hand pain actually leading him straight toward this legendary immune survivor? We're about to find out. He heads back to Alener to return her crystal, but she cuts him off, pointing at a new message glowing on the screen. Meanwhile, Bennett tells the others he finally reached their classmates, but the news is grim. The survivors are still in mortal danger. An infected beast is prowling right outside their hiding spot, a twisted creature that used to be a simple house cat. The group spots a small apothecary shop and tries to find shelter, but Bennett realizes the heavy oak door is bolted shut. He suggests smashing the windows, but the others hiss that breaking the glass will only invite the monsters inside to finish them off. They spot an old stable further down the road, but Bennett catches a glimpse of a dark shadow moving behind the shop's glass. He doesn't have time to investigate the strange shape and sprints toward the stable as fast as his tired legs can carry him. Once they're safe inside, they catch their breath and pray that the creature they saw wasn't that same monster from before. But one man saw the truth. The beast was alive, and it was busy merging its flesh with other infected corpses into something nightmarish. The teenagers watch through the cracks as the creature begins searching for something. So what do you and I think? Is there really any place left to hide from a hunter with a scent that sharp? All right, stick with me. We're diving into a nightmare where a simple pit stop turns into a total bloodbath for Beckett. Beckett takes a breath in the temporary safe house and tries to reach Maeve, but her line is dead. Furious, The young man vows that if he ever finds that coward of a driver, he'll end him personally. Julian finds a grim humor in the situation, reminding Beckett how he'd promised everything would be just fine. Beckett claims he's not actually angry, though Julian can see the lad is clearly still in total shock. Shortly after, Beckett heads off to scavenge for food, hoping to find anything useful in the ruins. As he searches, memories of Maeve being dragged away haunt him, and he slams a drawer in pure rage. Sir Alistair tells the boy he'll help find Maeve, but only if Beckett promises to protect others as well. He mentions Maeve spoke of their past, while they were busy preparing a few makeshift fire bombs. Suddenly, an infected beast slams Beckett against the glass, forcing the teenagers to retreat into the back room. Spotting civilians trapped in the shop, Alistair calls them over, but Beckett warns that letting them in is dangerous. Now pay attention here. This is the moment Beckett realizes that being a hero means saving everyone, not just yourself. The desperate survivors pile into the room, just before the man shuts the door. He realizes the beast is still alive despite the impact, just as Beckett starts frantically searching for anything the group can use. Opening a desk drawer, the young man finally finds a set of car keys and declares they can finally reach the shelter, but then they notice those cells are seeping in. Acting fast, the man grabs a chair and smashes the window open, so the group can escape the encroaching nightmare. They rush outside as Julian shouts the brand of the vehicle they need to find in the crowded lot. But every car looks exactly the same, making it impossible for them to find the right vehicle in the chaos. Alistair tries the key in a nearby car and it starts, so he urges the kids to get inside quickly. That's when they realize the rest of the survivors are being hunted down by that mutated, infected cat. The woman at the very back of the group trips and is immediately caught by the screeching creature. She screams for her friend to help, but the coward leaves her behind and scrambles into the car. After a frantic drive through the ruins, the group finally arrives at the gates of Salisbury Station. I know what you're thinking. They made it, right? Well, their phones just buzzed with a level 3 warning. Looking up, they see the grand buildings being swallowed whole by those disgusting, pulsating biological cells. Meanwhile, at the shelter, Arthur stands in line to meet the immune survivor, watching the man as his hand throbs. Back at the station, a monster clings to the car, causing them to slam right into a fleshy barricade. With the main road blocked by wrecks, Alistair decides to gamble on a dangerous path through the gridlock. Beckett asks how much further to the shelter, and Julian tells him they just have to keep moving. As they weave through the carnage, they pass a bus filled with terrified souls trapped by the monsters. Julian admits he'll feel the guilt forever if they just drive past and pretend they didn't see them. The man stops the car suddenly, despite being so close to the safety of the shelter's gates. He remembers his wife's final plea for him to survive and realizes he can't leave these people behind. Alistair hops out and grabs a fuel hose from the pump to set a trap for the beasts. The stranger demands they move so he can drive, but Beckett is distracted and asks about starting a fire. Alistair produces a lighter, and the boy snatches it from his hand before the man can even think of moving away. Beckett warns him not to dare touch the wheel while they're outside, then heads straight for the back of the car. He asks Alistair how they'll ever find Maeve if they stay here, arguing they aren't exactly heroes meant to save the world. Alistair simply apologizes, knowing the boy can't yet understand the burden of the choices he's making. He approaches the bus and shouts to the civilians that he's going to burn a path for them. A woman screams a warning from inside as a hulking monster lunges at Alistair from the shadows. The coward in the car panics, trying to run the kids over to seize control of the wheel. Alistair douses the creature in fuel to defend himself, only to realize he's already given away his lighter. Trust me, you've got to see what Beckett does next. All right, stick with me as we witness a young hero ignite a magic fire stone to blow this monster straight to hell. The ground erupts in a massive blast, setting the beast ablaze while Arthur and Sarah scream for Thomas after he steals their wagon. Inside the escaping carriage, Arthur tells himself that he had no choice but to leave the others behind to survive this nightmare. The teenagers realize the fuel line is leaking and on fire right before the entire carriage blows up right in front of them. Arthur survives the wreck and asks if the teens are okay, just as a squad of royal knights appears to secure the area. The knights report they found survivors and tell Thomas that they will be taken to a safe refuge immediately. At the shelter, people can hear the massive explosion caused by the group of boys echoing through the halls. The lights flicker out, and a castle official announces that the emergency magic generators will be turned on soon. Liam uses his phone's flashlight to navigate the dark halls, only to be blocked by a stern castle guard. The boy keeps searching the shadows for the legendary person rumored to be completely immune to the spreading blight. Suddenly, Liam's hand begins to throb. Now pay attention, because he has finally found the immune one. The mysterious man, Leon, says he sensed Liam approaching and mocks the boy for being less sensitive to his surroundings. Liam asks if it is true that Leon is immune, and if he also survived contact with the curse without a cell. Leon bursts into laughter, finding Liam's question hilarious, and tells the boy that he is quite a funny character. He explains that there is no such thing as a cell-less curse, because every blight has a microscopic core that feeds. Even if these cells are invisible to the naked eye, they still grow and multiply deep inside a host's body. There is always an incubation period before the transformation begins, though the kingdom keeps that a secret from the terrified public. Leon then drops a bombshell, stating that both he and Liam are already immune because the curse cannot fully take them. He explains that the pain in Liam's hand is harmless because the blight cells are currently in a deep, inactive slumber. The aching is just a reaction, nothing more. Then, a voice calls out asking if Leon is finished with his smoke. Before he leaves, Leon gives Liam a final piece of advice that you and I should probably remember for later. He warns the boy never to run from a monster immediately, as facing them is the only way to truly learn. Returning to the main hall, Liam finds Kale and his friends huddled around a crystal mirror watching recorded footage. They show him a video of the fire at the station, where the monster's agonizing screams echo through the air. Kale suggests they should just burn every single beast they encounter, once they finally reach a safe royal shelter. Suddenly, Sophie appears and asks Liam if he has seen the toxic messages in the class chat group. Liam sees his classmates bullying Baron, but Kale tells him not to worry since traitors deserve to be publicly humiliated. Just then, a new group of survivors arrives from the Scorch district, including Baron and his group, causing Liam's anger to spike. He knows if they hadn't abandoned him, Julian might still be alive, while Thomas spots the cowardly coachman nearby. The man who left them is actually in the shelter, just as Baron approaches Kale to confront him. Baron is furious about the chat messages and demands a full apology for the way they spoke about their friends. Kale sees the anger in his eyes and mocks him, asking if he wants to throw a punch, but Baron holds back. He says if he were his old self, Kale would be on the floor, while the boy mocks Baron's history of fighting. Kale just laughs it off, bringing up Baron's old reputation for getting into trouble back in his younger academy days. Furious, Baron grabs Kale by the collar, but Liam suddenly steps in, his eyes burning with pure, unadulterated fury. Liam is livid about being left for dead at the tower alongside Julian, while the others fled to safety. Upstairs, the panicking carriage driver runs right into Thomas, who is waiting for him with a lethal stare. Thomas seizes him by the throat, demanding to know the location of the young girls the man kidnapped earlier. The man breaks free and screams that everyone ran away as soon as the monsters attacked the carriage. Liam continues to press Baron on why he was abandoned, causing Sarah to offer a tearful, pathetic apology. She claims she was just too terrified to help, but Liam snaps back, calling her cowardice absolutely sickening. He tells her to shut up because her excuses are repulsive, then shouts that Julian would still be alive. Liam can forgive them for leaving him, but he can't understand why they abandoned his defenseless friend to the dark. The heated argument is cut short when a shelter guard demands that all new arrivals state their official names. "Trust me, you and I are going to want to see how Baron answers for his crimes in the next part. All right, you and I are about to see a noble friendship turn into a nightmare, as Julian claims Arthur planned to leave Tristan at the tower. Arthur lunges at his classmate in a blind rage, but is quickly stopped by the keep guards before they go to register their names. Alara begins to weep, haunted by the memory of the watchtower where they had to shatter the windows just to escape the encroaching darkness. Julian was too terrified to jump into the unknown, so Silas shoved the boy aside in disgust, mocking him for even having friends at all. He sneers that if Julian wants to rot with the others, that is his own choice, and now back at the keep, Alaric says to forget it. Since it's all in the past, Tristan approaches a guard to search for Gwen's name, but the knight cannot find the girl on the lists. He frantically asks about Beatrice and Marcus instead, just as Cedric arrives at the gates accompanied by the trembling royal carriage driver. Alina demands to know how the man could abandon his friends, but he claims the teenagers were the ones begging him to turn the carriage back. Kieran growls that he should never have left children behind in such a hell, but the driver explains he had to save his own daughter. He claims the girls threatened him with heavy blacksmith maces when he didn't obey, and hearing this, Silas remains completely silent in the shadows. The driver says not to worry because the king's army is coming at dawn to search, yet Silas still asks exactly where they were abandoned. At night, Julian and his friend wonder how anyone can even sleep in this place. Then they question why Arthur looks so incredibly depressed. The boy stays silent, but Tristan starts laughing as he recalls the look on Silas's face when he realized the protagonist was still very much alive. Seraphina appears behind Arthur, asking to sit near him because the keep is crowded, but before he can even answer, she just takes the spot. Now pay attention here. Tristan remains lost in his own dark thoughts, while Seraphina warns him never to trust another living soul. She says people change the moment a situation turns deadly, and Arthur admits that at the watchtower, people were begging him for help. He decided to lock the door to keep the monsters out, and confesses he will never forget the hateful eyes staring back at him. Seraphina asks why he's sharing this burden with her, and the protagonist asks what he should do if that terrible choice ever happens again. He asks if she truly trusts him, but she says no because he's hiding a secret, so Arthur wonders if she would even believe the truth. He explains he's never had a single friend he could trust on this journey, and Seraphina stands up, claiming he gives her the chills. However, Arthur begs her not to leave for her own safety, revealing that this castle is no longer the sanctuary they all thought it was. He whispers that more than half of the new refugees who just arrived at the keep are already carrying the deadly blight curse. Now here's the part you and I need to watch. Alina and the squires finally rest, while Marcus sarcastically mentions their noble pilgrimage. The older man notes that Silas is as stubborn as ever, and Arthur wonders why his friend wants to leave the keep so late. No one is allowed to pass the gates before sunrise, so Cedric asks how the reunion with their separated classmates went during the chaos. Marcus looks discouraged and asks to drop the subject since they argued, and he isn't sure they will ever see each other again. The old man advises them to stick together because in times like these, the only way to survive is through true unity. Alina walks the dark halls and remembers Arthur telling her not to apologize because the sound of her voice was simply disgusting to him. Two men walk past, one telling a story of betrayal, while the other says to take it as a lesson in human nature. They agree that the true heart of man is revealed in chaos, and hearing this, the young girl climbs the stairs in tears. She realizes she was just as terrified as the rest, and suddenly Silas appears, asking what she is doing out in the dark alone. Meanwhile, Milo is using his scrying mirror and notices that Isolde has shared a new vision to her magical broadcast channel. A ragged beggar appears behind the student, asking if the vision is interesting, which startles the boy as the man complains about the light. Cedric steps in to protect the young man, demanding to know the problem, as a group of beggars warns that the second floor is theirs. 𝒐𝒗 continues to question what Alina was doing there in the dark, and she simply replies she was looking for a breath of air. He tells her she should return to the others immediately, but then she pauses to ask the one question he wasn't expecting. She looks him in the eye and asks if he is actually okay, while the shadows of the keep seem to grow even longer. Back in the main hall, Tristan watches the others with a cold gaze, knowing the curse is already spreading through the unsuspecting crowd. He wonders who will be the first to turn, and if any of them will have the strength to do what is necessary. Serafina watches him from a distance, her suspicion growing as she realizes Arthur knows far more than he is letting on to anyone. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a sword, and everyone is just waiting for the first scream to break. The carriage driver hides in a corner, clutching his daughter's hand, terrified that his lies will eventually catch up to his ruined reputation. 𝒐𝒗 looks at the sealed gates of the keep, knowing that the real monsters might already be locked inside the walls with them. Alina waits for an answer, but 𝒐𝒗 just turns away, leaving her alone with her fears in the cold, flickering torchlight of the hall. "Trust me, you and I won't want to miss the ending. All right, you and I are diving back into a world where our heroes are now branded as traitors." Beatrice confesses it was all her fault for abandoning Julian, while they were frantically fleeing back to the safety of the fortress. Elara snaps back that nobody forced Julian to save her from that beast, much less wait for her to escape the monster's lair. She knows Lord 𝒐𝒗, and the others are just looking for a scapegoat to cover their own cowardice in that nightmare situation. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rips through the sanctuary as a woman begins acting like a feral, mindless beast. A shining stone reveals the horrifying truth. The man's wife has been consumed by the dreaded crimson rot. Chaos erupts as the survivors realize a plague-born monster is trapped inside the great hall with them. A sleeping traveler wakes to the commotion, but he is far too late to escape as the infected woman strikes him. Elara and Beatrice rush to find Sir Galahad, desperate to understand the nightmare unfolding on the lower floor. The knight stares down, trying to gauge how many ghouls have already breached the citadel's inner sanctum. Terrified nobles slam the heavy oak doors shut when they see commoners desperately seeking a safe refuge from the rot on that floor. They heartlessly debate whether the poor are actually a greater threat than the monsters currently devouring the entire kingdom. Realizing the path is blocked, the young squires decide to search for a hidden escape through the catacombs. Beatrice notices Julian and his crew are also hunting for a desperate way out amidst the growing madness that is spreading around them. Somewhere in the shadows, the rogue Mordred watches the plague spread across the realm with a cold, mocking smile. A castle guard warns him to flee, unaware of the horror standing right behind him. Mordred mocks the man's fear, pointing out the infected corpses already twitching in the darkness nearby. He claims he didn't start this fire, but he certainly knows how to make the infection burn much brighter than it did before. Now watch this carefully. Mordred reveals his dark gift to control the very speed at which the infection consumes a human soul. He reaches out and instantly awakens the rot inside the guard, turning him into a mindless thrall. While the man screams, Mordred kneels, searching for an ancient relic before offering him a cryptic path to becoming immune to the rot. Lord 𝒐𝒗's group is fuming that Julian still lives, but their petty anger is cut short by terror. The floors below are now a sea of teeth and claws as the monsters swarm the building. Julian warns them that nowhere is safe, even as a blinding pain shoots through his cursed hand once again in this dark place. His companions tell him to toughen up immediately, fearing his strange behavior will only cause more panic among the survivors. But Julian can feel it. This agony is different, pulsing like a dark heartbeat in the air. Beatrice begins to believe that Julian's pain acts as a compass, reacting whenever they get close to someone infected with the deadly virus. Below them, the noise of the crowd draws every hungry monster in the area straight toward them. The highborn flee in a panic, wondering how the infection could have breached such heavy stone walls. The two groups finally collide, but the air is thick with distrust and unspoken accusations. A wave of panicked refugees surges forward, desperate to outrun the creeping death. Sir Galahad draws his steel, standing firm against an infected beast to buy the others some time. Pay attention here. The nobles above can only watch as the ground floor becomes a bloody slaughterhouse for the innocent. Julian collapses as the curse in his arm burns hotter than ever before, signaling a new and terrifying threat. More monsters emerge from the shadows, completely surrounding the terrified group of survivors. Through gritted teeth, Julian shouts that their only hope for survival is to conjure fire immediately. Galahad calls for a flint, planning to ignite the grand tapestries to create a wall of flame. The girls watch Julian in horror as cold sweat drenches him, fearing he is finally losing the fight. He stares at his trembling hand, wondering if he is finally starting to feel the same sensation as the dead around him now. They hurl the burning carpet forward, creating a temporary barrier of flame against the hungry shadows on that floor. Ilara asks why he's staring so intently at the carnage below, while they are still in danger. Julian says they cannot run forever. They must finally understand exactly what kind of hellish creatures they are facing in this dark sanctuary. Lord Silas curses the king's army, wondering why the royal knights haven't come to their rescue yet. Little does he know, the military has already decided to burn the entire district to successfully contain the spreading rot in this area. Trust me, you and I are about to see this sanctuary become a fiery tomb for everyone inside. All right, you and I are diving into a world where survivors use fire to keep the blight at bay in their sanctuary. While holding the line, they wonder why the king's knights haven't arrived to defend the realm 24 hours a day. As the others fight, Alaric tells Ilara he actually met the immune traveler everyone is whispering about lately. Apparently, this man knew everything about how the blight spreads and how long the rot stays hidden in the blood. Ilara asks why he is bringing this up now, but our hero realizes something the others have completely missed. He explains that the infected show zero symptoms while the rot is dormant, making it impossible to tell who is safe. If the blight suddenly wakes up and begins to spread, there would be absolutely nothing they could do to stop it. Alaric remembers that even when he faced a monster before, he felt no pain, but now his hand is burning again. Kaelin watches from the shadows, annoyed by how close Alaric has become to the girl since they reached the fortress. Suddenly, Beatrice finds a new message from Helena hidden in her journal, proving their friend might still be out there. Merrick says the ink is smudged and hard to read, so it was likely written in a desperate, frantic hurry. The boy insists they must survive for her sake, but his comrade argues they are trapped with no way to escape. Merrick then lifts a lantern to the floor below, causing the rot cells to swarm toward the glowing light immediately. Now watch this. He just realized these monsters are obsessed with light. Beatrice worries about leaving the safety of the walls, especially since the darkness outside makes it impossible to see the path. Meanwhile, Merrick starts planning a way to use this newfound attraction to lure the monsters away from them. Just then, the royal knights finally reach the gates, and the crowd celebrates, thinking they are finally saved from the nightmare. Civilians start shouting from the parapets to signal the riders, while Kaelin gets irritated that the others are ignoring him. The group barely cares about his petty grudges because, at that moment, Alaric collapses in total agony on the cold floor. A young woman rushes over to help him, but she stops dead when she sees his face has turned completely monstrous. She panics and screams that he is infected, claiming he looks just like the beasts roaming the lower levels of the keep. As everyone backs away, Alaric begins hallucinating, seeing visions of the very creatures that are hunting them all down. The girl tries to flee, but a monster lunges from the shadows behind her, sinking its claws into her before she can move. To save her, Tristan orders everyone to clear the way as he throws burning rugs into the center of the hall. Alaric's friends watch him struggle against the pain, and Kaelin wonders if he had been hiding his infection all this time. The young man asks if the boy is truly turning into a monster, but Alaric insists they have it all wrong. Alara demands to know how he can sense the blight in others, but he tells her to stay out of his business. He finally snaps, telling everyone to shut their mouths after everything he has done to keep them alive this long. He orders his companions to stop suspecting him and worry about their own lives instead of pointing fingers at their savior. Watching his cold reaction, Alara realizes he isn't just defending himself. He is warning them that someone else is infected. "You and I saw that." Kaelin asks why Alaric is staring at him. The boy reveals the truth. Kaelin already has the rot flowing through his veins, and it is only a matter of time. Enraged, Kaelin grabs his collar and demands to know what kind of lies he is spreading to save his own skin. Alaric calmly explains that the infection has already taken hold, and the incubation period is almost over for the young noble. Desperate and terrified, Kaelin claims Alaric is only lying because everyone else was already suspicious of his weird behavior. Beatrice steps between them, arguing that Alaric has no right to judge who is cursed by the blight and who isn't. He just glares at them, warning that they will all regret underestimating him when the true horror finally begins to unfold. Suddenly, the Inquisitors storm the hall, using fire to purge every monster in sight as they push toward the survivors. When they see a woman beginning to turn, the soldiers show no mercy and immediately set her ablaze with their staves. Her husband screams in rage at the senseless killing, but the knights announce they have found even more infected targets. Seeing the soldiers' cold eyes, Seraphina tells the group to run before they are all burned alive in the cleansing. The teenagers sprint down the corridor as it becomes clear the knights plan to execute everyone to stop the spread. At the end of the hall, the purifiers are already waiting, cutting down anyone in their way without a second thought. Merrick suddenly uses his mana stone to blind the soldiers, causing them to fire their flames wildly into the empty air. Seraphina reaches them and says they must escape, and trust me, it is about to get wild. Trust me, you and I are about to see a survival story where the monsters are actually the people in charge. Looking through the glass, Julian plans to abandon Myra's group and lead his own people to a different sanctuary nearby. Just then, the local vagrants reach Tristan and Rowan, offering their knowledge of the back alleys to help everyone escape. The whole crowd begins a frantic sprint to evade the royal soldiers who were planning to burn them at dawn. By morning, the kingdom's news reports that various guilds have filed massive complaints against the crown's suspicious handling of things. At a press conference, they reveal the government knew about the mutant plague in Southport, but intentionally let it spread. Leaked scrolls from anonymous whistleblowers prove the king systematically buried information about the true scale of the virus crisis. The crown quickly fires back, claiming these reports are fabricated lies designed to cause panic among the terrified common folk. Inside a makeshift camp, a man brings bread to his wife, but she refuses to eat even a single bite. He begs her to break her fast, but she just weeps, terrified she cannot reach her son, young Arthur. The father tries to stay strong, suggesting their boy is probably just sleeping off the exhaustion from his long journey. Meanwhile, others nearby watch reports of a massive inferno that consumed the city's outskirts during the middle of the night. The guards blame the fire on reckless refugees who ignored the law, though hundreds were likely killed in the blaze. Watching the smoke on the horizon, Arthur's mother can only imagine her son is trapped somewhere in that burning chaos. Elsewhere in the capital, the band of students finally finds a quiet building where they can catch their breath. The old vagrant asks if they must wait for the southeast gate to open, and Rowan nods in agreement. He explains these kids were only here for a school excursion and have nowhere else to go in this nightmare. The man insists there is no need for such long explanations, as he is simply paying back a life debt. He tells the group they can hide there as long as necessary, while the royal army patrols the main streets. A captain from the guard demands cooperation, swearing that their brutal methods are only for the safety of the public. They ask if anyone has seen signs of the rot, but the terrified citizens stay silent, afraid of being taken. Now watch this part carefully, because a certain betrayal is about to get incredibly ugly for our main hero. Caleb steps forward and lies, saying he saw a sick boy escape and asks if the guards will hunt him. Arthur stares out at the desolate streets, plagued by the terrifying thought that he might actually be carrying the infection. He wonders how he can even be sure of his own health after everything that happened during that horrific night. Meanwhile, Caleb whispers to the knight that he had been suspicious of Arthur from the moment they first met. He spins a wild tale, claiming Arthur admitted he was a carrier and purposely infected a defenseless woman earlier today. Another guard asks for proof, but the knight reveals that Arthur's name is already on the crown's high priority list. The knight notes that blaming a single super spreader would certainly help deflect the public's boiling anger away from the crown. Caleb justifies his snake-like behavior by telling himself that Arthur was the one who dared to attack him first. Leaving the small shack, the soldier asks if Caleb made any physical contact with the boy they are now hunting. Caleb lies again, claiming he kept his distance because the boy was acting like a crazed monster during the evacuation. But pay attention to this, because Leona was hiding nearby and overheard every single word of Caleb's disgusting lies. Elsewhere, Beatrice wakes up scratching her skin, complaining that her whole body feels like it is crawling with tiny bugs. Silas tells her it is just lice from the old tavern pillows, and then worries about his dying phone battery. Caleb's friend insults Silas for being dumb enough to travel into a crisis without bringing a portable mana charger. Silas asks where Caleb went, and his friend admits they got separated during the madness at the first safe house. He shrugs it off, saying he and Caleb were never actually as close as the rest of the class thought. Tristan enters, reporting that he has scouted the building and found the structural conditions surprisingly good for their needs. The ground floor serves as a reception area, featuring a coffee machine that is useless without any magical power. He found empty offices on the second floor, where it seems the staff fled to the royal shelter in haste. The third floor provides a resting area and a small cafeteria with some ingredients still left in the pantry downstairs. Tristan declares the sanctuary secure, while Sarah notes that staying here is better than trusting any government-run shelter. She points out that nowhere is truly safe anymore, so they must be careful with others entering their new home. You and I have to wonder, is any sanctuary truly safe in a kingdom full of traitors? Let's find out together. All right, stick with me here. We're diving into a total survival nightmare where locked doors are everything. Becky warns that Arthur is their biggest threat because his behavior last night was seriously suspicious and completely untrustworthy. She asks Alina if Arthur is infected, but Alina snaps back that she has absolutely no idea about that. If they're so curious, Alina suggests they ask Arthur directly about what's really going down with the infection. But honestly, why would he take them seriously after they abandoned him back at the cable car station? Miles tells her to quit the mockery because they need to stick together just to stay alive. Alina clearly doesn't trust a single soul here, but Sophie tells everyone to focus on finding a safe shelter. The group finally decides to head to the cafeteria to scavenge for whatever food might be left for them. On the way, the boys notice Miles and Sophie arguing. Then Becky heads off to wash her face. She starts remembering the old shelter, while Arthur waits on the stairs with a look of pure hatred. Becky wonders how anyone can stay so calm after the hell they've all just crawled through recently. She feels like everyone is looking down on her, and she just can't take the disrespect anymore. The young woman tells her ally that the entire group is gathering in the cafeteria on the lower floor. Arthur doesn't even blink, heading down the stairs without giving the poor girl a single second of attention. Sophie spots him heading for the exit and begs him to stop, asking where he thinks he's going in this mess. She pleads with him to stay inside, because the world out there has become way too dangerous for anyone. Arthur pushes her aside, telling her to stay out of his way since nowhere feels truly safe anymore. Down in the cafeteria, the boys struggle with the oven while Miles looks for a working lighter. Becky looks toward the stairs, wondering why the rest of the group hasn't joined them for dinner yet. Now watch this part closely. This mysterious call from Hannah is about to change absolutely everything for our group. Sophie warns Arthur that going outside is suicide, but she has no idea what he's so worried about. Since he's never been infected by the virus, she insists that staying put is his only real option right now. Arthur ignores the warning and swings the door open, only to find a pack of wanderers entering the building. Meanwhile, Becky desperately asks where Hannah and the rest of their missing friends are. Hannah explains they're hiding in a building near where they last saw their friend before the chaos started in the city. They're trapped in an alley full of travel signs, but the call drops as the phone battery dies. The call is cut short when her battery dies, and trying to call back proves absolutely useless for now. Miles points out the number is a total mystery and wonders how this stranger even got Becky's private digits. Becky explains that Ruby was with them and knew his number, just as Arthur and Sophie finally arrive downstairs now. Arthur doesn't waste words, telling everyone they need to evacuate the building immediately before it's far too late. You and I both know that look. Things get worse when a massive man and his followers appear. These wanderers swarm in, dragging Sarah with them, as the leader demands to know who else is hiding here. Suddenly, the man who helped the boys earlier arrives and claims the teenagers are actually his guests. Both groups sit down to talk, though they're shocked to see the old man hasn't left for shelter. The leader admits he nearly died at the station and wonders what kind of curse is following them. John listens to the story with a grim face, while the others wait for the meeting to end. Miles complains that these newcomers look like total gangsters, and he doesn't like their grumpy attitudes. Troy says the man who helped them will be fine because he's legendary and well-armed in this area. The leader tells John to pack up and leave, asking if they can settle this without any blood. Some of the thugs suggest sharing the girls, but John shuts them down with a terrifyingly cold and intimidating glare. Troy reveals the secret. John is actually a former boxer who won an Asian championship back then. John stands up, declaring he owes these kids a debt, so a peaceful ending is off the table. Becky tells Troy that her missing friend is alive, and she's sure they're safe for the moment. The driver gave away their drop-off point, so the group just needs to focus their search right there. Trust me, you'll want to see how Sarah's growing fear changes everything next. All right, you and I are about to enter a fortress where every shadow hides a deadly threat that could kill them all. The squires wonder why Lady Alara is so terrified of the dregs lurking in the dark corners of this bastion. Baron Merrick suggests they negotiate with these outcasts to share the inner chambers to avoid any unnecessary conflict. Alara scoffs, reminding them that their last refuge was completely overrun by the shadow-rot plague that nearly destroyed them. She warns that history will repeat itself unless they purge these dregs before the rot spreads to the remaining survivors. Sitting alone, Alara wonders if Alistair is actually carrying the very corruption they all fear so much. She storms out of the room, accusing the group of inviting their own doom through their hesitation and pity. When asked where she is headed, she snaps that it is none of their concern as she walks away. Wandering the stone halls, she considers fleeing to another kingdom until she spots Alistair lurking near the outcasts. Now, pay attention here. Alara catches him off guard, demanding to see his heavily scarred hand at last. She finally understands the truth after seeing how the shadow rot reacts to the holy power of alchemical fire. His hand pulses whenever the blight is near, and Alistair does not even try to deny her heavy suspicions. He is just scouting the exit, claiming it is for the best since she never trusted his rogue nature anyway. Alara surprises him, insisting she never truly doubted him and wants to escape this hell together as a team. She is ready to leave this cursed fortress behind, as long as they face the dangerous wasteland as one. Alistair agrees, but he is uneasy. He can feel a darkness closing in that should not be there. The stench of the rot is everywhere, and he knows it is a death trap for a noblewoman like her. She grabs his tunic, telling him to quit the brooding hero act and just follow her lead to safety. Since he is the only one suspected of the rot, She asks if he feels like a chosen one. Alastair recalls how she saved him from the wreckage of the last fallen fortress they both inhabited. Alara claims it was pure strategy. She never makes a move without a clear escape plan ready for action. You and I see where this is going. He threatens to leave her if the plan gets too messy. He asks if she finally understands the fear of being abandoned in a den of starving, infected monsters. Descending the stone steps, Alastair wonders if he pushed his luck a bit too far with the young noble. He remembers how he desperately pulled Alara from the fires of the capital just a few days ago. Deep down, he still wants her by his side, but then a group of dregs suddenly blocks his path. These outcasts are insulted that he fled from them before, and now they are looking for his blood. Alara steps in, ordering the beggars to back off while the young squires watch them both in deep suspicion. The rumor of his blight spreads, and even the most desperate dregs retreat from him in absolute terror. She tells him the fortress is safe enough, provided they exile the corrupted souls among them very soon. But Alastair knows better. He has to get her out before the Inquisition knights arrive at the gate. Sir Galahad approaches the group, asking if Alastair is ready for a dangerous scout through the burning ruins. The outcasts warn them the wasteland is lethal, even if the dragonfire cleared some of the rot earlier today. If the Iron Inquisition finds them out there will be no mercy for anyone they find alive. The king's soldiers are slaughtering the poor to ensure the plague does not reach the wealthy, noble houses. Alastair asks why Galahad risks everything for these kids, and it all comes back to a painful memory. Galahad speaks of a lady who dreamt of teaching children, despite failing her holy knight trials years ago. She was his betrothed, a soul who gave her last coin to keep the city orphans happy and fed. He believes that by saving these children, he might finally earn her forgiveness from the high heavens above them. Galahad points toward the merchant district banners, where they will prepare their alchemical bombs for the final stand. They need to space out the jars to maximize the chaos, while Merrick leads the rescue mission. He tells the young squires to stay hidden. They will return with the hostages in less than an hour's time. As they move out, Baron Merrick spots Alastair and finally offers a sincere apology for abandoning him that day. He does not ask for mercy, acknowledging that he owes Alastair a debt that gold can never truly pay. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, the real battle for survival for our heroes is just beginning. Alastair owes a massive debt for saving Lady Helena at the spire. Alara sees the men leaving and demands to join. She refuses to stay safe while her sisters are in peril outside. Seraphina immediately doubts her, knowing the dangers lurking out there. She warns that they will all perish if the blight creatures catch their scent. It is suicide to step outside those gates. Let us see if these survivors can actually last 10 days until the great gate opens, or if the bastion becomes their tomb. Sir Cedric agrees. He tells the men to guard the bastion, because if this last refuge falls to the rot, they are finished. Staying behind is the only way to ensure the infection does not breach the walls. One slip-up, and every soul inside is dead. Before departing, Cedric asks Silas to watch the orphans. Meanwhile, Silas watches Alara, his mind spinning with dark, bitter thoughts of betrayal. He remembers how she left him and Julian to rot at the spire. How can she claim to care about friends now? Pure hypocrisy. Seraphina snaps everyone back to reality, announcing a desperate plan. But suddenly, a frantic scout arrives with news of a riot below. The dregs are losing it. A massive brawl has broken out on the lower floors, and the fragile piece of the refuge is shattering. Seraphina warns her methods will only repel the blight, not cure it. They are just buying time in a world that is dying. Now watch this. Wallace tries to stop the madness, but he ends up taking a blade to the gut instead. The beggar king sneers, saying Wallace should have used words instead of force. Then, without warning, the mob launches a full-on assault. Seraphina sighs, realizing that even with monsters outside, it is always human greed that ruins everything. Alara senses something worse is coming. The air shifts. It feels like a storm is brewing. Alara warns that a fresh wave of the infected has reached their doorstep. She tells them not to question her instincts, but she knows the blight is here. The monsters are scratching at the very walls. Right on cue, the mob of dregs arrives, screaming for the teenagers. Meanwhile, grim news reaches the capital via messenger birds. The Citizens' Union has exposed the High Council's lies. They have been hiding the true scale of the blight's devastation for weeks. Leaked scrolls reveal the Royal Army's secret drills. They were not training to save people. They were training to contain the mess. The military's solution is brutal. Categorize every citizen as either clean or rotted. Those marked as infected are left to the flames. The Crown remains silent, refusing to comment. Meanwhile, Alistair and Cedric move through the abandoned, ash-covered city streets. They spot Inquisitors burning heaps of bodies in the square. Terrified, the two retreat back into the shadows of a narrow alleyway. Cedric warns the boy to keep his blade ready. The blight touched could crawl out of the sewers at any moment, showing no mercy. As they trek through the gloom, Alistair thinks back to why he even agreed to hunt for Lady Helena in this nightmare. Alistair calls out to the knight, but Cedric tells him to drop the formal titles. They are not that far apart in age. The boy admits he is shocked a seasoned knight would risk his life for a girl. Cedric just chuckles at the kid's bravery. Most youths would have fled the city by now. He wonders what kind of bond Alistair shares with Helena to walk into hell. You and I both know there is more to this than just friendship. Cedric asks Alistair what he really feels for the girl. Alistair dodges the question, claiming his feelings do not matter now. Suddenly, they reach a district completely choked by fungal growths. The knight wants to find another route, but Alistair isn't waiting. He hurls a fire flask, turning the street into an inferno. They punch through the fire and find an old apothecary shop. Cedric suggests gathering clean water and supplies for the girls. While packing bags, Alistair finally decides to answer. He starts talking about his days as a young, arrogant street urchin. Back then, he was a delinquent who hated the noble schools for no reason. His life felt hollow, like a broken cup. That emptiness followed him everywhere until he met Helena. She was the first person to actually see him, not just a rat. He recalls meeting her and her mother in the gardens. The noblewoman did not look down on him. She called him handsome. She hoped they would become true friends. Before that day, Alistair had not even dared to speak to a lady of standing. But Helena kept seeking him out at the academy. Every conversation with her felt like a light flickering in his dark world. For the first time, the void inside him started to close. By the day of the knight's graduation, he felt like a new man. While others celebrated with family, Alistair stood alone. Helena's mother approached him then, offering a gift and some kind words. She said his parents would have been proud of him. Then, she insisted he join their family portrait to mark the occasion. Alistair whispers that he prayed that moment of warmth would last forever. Cedric listens, seeing the pain in the boy's eyes. He reassures the boy that they will find her alive. But as they leave, they find themselves staring down a royal battalion. Back at the bastion, the dregs realize the two men left to find food. Their leader grows impatient, sensing a potential trap. He threatens to slaughter everyone if the men do not return. Seraphina doesn't flinch, standing her ground against the mob leader. Trust me, you and I are about to see this powder keg explode as the survivors are locked away by the dregs. Stick with me, we're entering a room where a brute threatens that if food isn't served soon, he'll deliver another beating. The students look back to see the refugee bleeding on the stone. Arthur is shocked, remembering Sir Tristan was once a famous gladiator. Julian asks how Seraphina could promise supplies to those mercenaries. The girl just stares back and asks if they have any better ideas. Julian argues their best option is to wait for the blight's symptoms to appear, as the contaminated will surely show their rot soon. Arthur and Tristan return while the refugees rest in the stone room. One of the men suddenly begins to feel quite unwell. Seraphina warns that the worst case is the virus activating now, taking over the citadel. They must escape before the plague claims them. She notices our hero Silas staring at her and asks if he wants to say something. The young man looks away quickly in silence. 𝒂𝒏𝒈 tells her he wasn't watching on purpose. He isolates himself, thinking he never should have entered this cursed shelter with these people. Suddenly, his communication stone glows with a message from Captain Cedric. Without a word, the boy begins to make his exit. Now pay attention, because the scene shifts to Arthur explaining that the blight is currently spreading during its quiet incubation period. As the boy leaves, Arthur notes the plague is currently spreading. He isn't sure what will happen to them in this dark basement. They're trapped in this basement refectory with no certainty of what's next. They were in the deep cafeteria at that very moment. There was a high possibility of getting trapped in that place. However, they could still use fire against the approaching darkness and rot. There's an old furnace in the back and a tinderbox that still works. If the virus spreads, they'll need a plan for the flames. The scene shifts to Julian, who warns that fire is a double-edged sword. The plague is highly flammable and could easily consume them all. He warns that fire is dangerous, as the blight fuels the heat. One spark could turn the stone basement into a sea of flames fast. One spark could create a sea of fire within these stone walls. They must remember they're deep inside a basement with no easy escape. Alina interrupts the tension, demanding to know why the boy is still there. Beside these beggars, she suspects an infected person is near. Arthur tells him not to be ridiculous, as they shouldn't suspect their own. The young man asks why, stating he owes them nothing. He scoffs, stating he's only speaking the truth. Unlike the rest of these nobles, he owes absolutely nothing to this desperate group. He declares he's leaving this pit and won't even be seen. He states he won't even stay to watch the rest of them rot. He asks if the girl is coming, as he warned her long ago. She should have left this place when he gave the word. He calls himself a fool for trying to save them after being left behind. He tells the whole group to just shut their mouths. Irritated, the boy asks if 𝒂𝒏𝒈 thinks they're friends just because they spoke. Our hero responds coldly, telling him to simply be quiet. 𝒂𝒏𝒈 responds that he told him to be silent. Arthur begs them to stop fighting immediately during this dire situation. Arthur tells them to stop because they shouldn't be doing this. He wants to know why the protagonist is so angry with everyone. He insists it is time for forgiveness. In this darkness, there's no choice but to trust one another if they want to see dawn. You and I both know there's no other choice but to trust each other. Alina scoffs, asking how long this bickering will last. Arthur asks her to wait, but she's been thinking since they left the mountains. She mentions the plague was the worst ever seen. This virus is the deadliest plague to ever appear. It keeps growing nonstop until the poor host finally meets a gruesome end. Alchemical division happens incessantly, spreading the corruption through the body. She concludes it acts like a magical cancer cell within them. She mentions she tried to think about the characteristics of the cells and realized they were always similar to known dark magic. Alina asks what this has to do with anything. She questions if they intend to burn the infected with high-frequency radiation spells. Julian asks if she's heard of using high-frequency heat as a secret medical treatment for these kinds of dark, spreading growths. He explains that heating the rot to 40 degrees is an effective way to kill it. Alina asks if they should focus on temperature. Arthur confirms it. The girl wonders if they can use water instead. She states that water wouldn't cause a massive, uncontrollable forest fire. Water would make purging the virus easier. She asks if they're really going to experiment with boiling water at different temperatures now. Another girl thinks the academy feels like a heartless arena for them. Even so, in a crisis like this, it shined quite brightly. That made the girl want to rely on it. Before she realized it, the hope felt completely useless at that exact moment. At that moment, the group hears a strange noise. Two men who were sleeping bolt upright as the silence is suddenly shattered. Alina realizes it was a scream. Arthur confirms the horror has begun and wonders if the plague is finally starting to transform them. Arthur confirms it was. He asks if the nightmare has finally started to consume the citadel as they stand frozen there. Silas quickly orders them to lock the heavy doors before the monsters descend. Another girl rushes to the entrance to bar the way. However, she can't reach the high iron latch. She desperately cries out that she needs a wooden chair to reach the top. And trust me, you and I are going to want to see if they can barricade that room before the nightmare truly begins. All right, you and I are about to watch Arthur grab every fireplace iron as he prepares for war today. They would wrap them in oil-soaked rags to ignite a blaze right as our hero looks to the side. He sees another man struggling to stand and asks if he is all right since they need to run fast. At that moment, the girl notices two of the blighted ones clawing at the heavy oak doors immediately right then. They were begging for someone to open up, while our boy watches the horror unfold right then as it happens. Outside the building, fire mages stand ready, claiming that everything feels just a bit too quiet tonight for comfort. Suddenly, an unknown creature appears above the citadel, and the soldiers immediately spot the twisted beast watching from above. They start shooting fire as a soldier asks if the hidden location was truly inside this massive guild manor house. Arthur is sure, having received a magical message that his friends were hiding in a chamber within the citadel manor. The soldiers push forward, knowing the survivors are 4 young noblewomen trapped inside the dark stone halls right now. The girls need rescue immediately, so they vow to save those people and return to finish the hunt later tonight. A boy tells his colleague, it seems the soldiers aren't coming to capture them after all today during this mission. Then a knight calls out, warning the group that they had found several rank monsters nearby in the shadows. They needed to burn them first. The boy asks if the corruption virus was really at a level of rank. Now pay attention, because rank of beasts are categorized by density and stand larger than any human body normally. Sometimes they even exceed 3 meters, as the boy remembers the plague at the alchemist station earlier that day. He mentions seeing cats fuse together into one massive creature. The soldier is very surprised by that dark news. He states it must really be rank A. The soldiers look around, realizing the girls are not there tonight. They begin searching the entire citadel, looking for any sign of where the survivors could have fled to find safety. Another soldier notices a door was left open and suggests they investigate that place right after the soldiers enter. The knights enter and notice traces of passage, but no survivors were found within those cold stone walls today. The boy looks ahead and comes across several wooden crates, a sight that makes him remember Alara right then. A knight says the tracks continue elsewhere as time passes, and the search drags on through the dark night. It seems someone passed through here after burning something, though there were no footprints in the narrow alleyway. Someone had definitely walked through there. Observing everything, the other boy remains silent at that exact moment right now. He starts running, wanting to find where his friend might be as a sudden flashback begins playing in his mind. In the memory, Alara says she just learned a really cool word while reading her ancient magic books today. She asked if he knew the word destiny, meaning fate, and that's why she liked that kind of thing. Irritated, the boy said he wasn't interested, making Alara feel deeply disappointed in that quiet moment. Later, the boy ends up waking up in the present and starts looking at his own hand in silence. He is still searching for his companion when he looks side and sees an unfamiliar leather bag on the floor. You saw that bag too, right? Right in front of it is another mysterious, open wooden door in the hall. He thinks about how he always hated the moment he opened the door to his silent family manor house. The hollow environment made him feel empty until he entered his room and found a gold purse and letter. His mother had left it with a note. Later, the boy is playing a strategic board game in private. He becomes frustrated about to lose the match, so he gets up and heads to a local tavern instead. He starts eating a bowl of simple stew while scrolling through a map, feeling very frustrated with his life. His purposeless days at the training academy seemed to last forever, until he encountered Alara one night after training. From that moment on, she improved his life, as the scene cuts to the boy speaking about their shared past. He says they ran into each other quite a lot during those final days of peace before the plague hit. Alara says she always passed that street at 9 bells after leaving her magic course in the city center. That was the first time she saw him. She mentions the tavern frequently had bargains on dinner for students. She says it was a pity she didn't meet him earlier to pick a meal for him at that moment. She notices the tavern was still open, though it usually closed at 7 bells after selling out of food. Unexpected, right? She asks if he has ever eaten that food before, as time begins to blur for us. Time passes as the two finish their stew. Alara insists that as a man, Alistair needs more than just broth. All right, stick with me, because this simple meal is about to turn into something much deeper. Alistair tells her to finish chewing before she speaks. He is stunned by how much food she can actually handle. Alara asks why he eats so little. He explains he ate before arriving, but then notices sauce on her cheek. She asks to take a portrait of him before they leave. Soon, the night begins to fade into the next. Alara says she is stuffed. She promises to pay for their next meal when they meet at the academy tomorrow. Alistair is shocked that she actually intended to pay. The next morning, the scene shifts to the academy grounds. Alistair is lost in thought during his training. He keeps wondering what Alara was thinking during their dinner last night. Time slips away and the bells ring, signaling the end of lessons. Students rush out to find their midday meal. Another student watches Alistair closely. He notices that Alistair has started paying a lot more attention to Alara lately. The scene moves to a bustling market. A man asks if 1,000,000 gold sovereigns was really spent on that. Looking at a prize stallion, the rider claims his most trusted stable gave him a massive discount for it. He tells the others they simply do not understand the value of an investment, but they just call him mad. Now watch closely here. The atmosphere is about to shift from lighthearted banter to something far more serious. One man mentions today's event, claiming the lady they are meeting is the most beautiful woman in the entire kingdom. Another boy says he is not interested in the spectacle. The scene then shifts to Alistair with his own circle. Despite being with his group, Alistair looks distant. He tells them to go ahead while he heads home alone instead. Walking the cobblestone streets, Alistair wonders if his friend is really there, or if he is just overthinking the situation. Checking the time, he sees it is nearly 9 p.m. Suddenly, he steps into an alchemist shop and finds Alara. She greets him warmly, asking if he was hunting for a bargain. She asks what happened since he is sweating. Alistair explains he runs everywhere to stay in shape. Because he used up so much energy, he is now starving. Alara falls silent for a moment before asking if he likes warm pastries. As they eat, they enjoy the company. You and I both know that look. Hunger is the best seasoning for a secret conversation like this. Alistair feels strangely comfortable eating with someone like her. Because of that, he eats much more than usual. Suddenly, the scene shifts, and Alara asks why he acts so strange at the academy during his daily lessons. She mentions he sleeps through every lecture and never speaks. Rumors say he is a mercenary fighting for his life. Alistair demands to know who is spreading these lies. Alara refuses to name names as the scene fades away. Alistair returns to his manor only to find his room in total disarray. His mother asks what the hour is. She calls out to her son again, mentioning his tutor said he wanted to leave the academy for good. She asks if the rumors are true. Alistair tries to explain that is not at all what he actually meant. Suddenly, Alistair is horrified. He sees his mother holding a vial of a forbidden dark elixir in her hand. He asks where she found it, reminding her of her promise to throw every last drop of it away. His mother cries out that everyone has made her suffer. She blames Alistair for the state of her broken life. The scene cuts to the infirmary where Alara's mother is being treated. Alara remembers her father's final words to her. He told her to look after her mother, but since the divorce, they have been in the ward constantly. She can never forgive him for abandoning them both. Later, Alistair is walking through the rain when he stops short. He notices Alara is already there waiting for him. She asks where he has been for such a long time. Alistair demands to know how she found his house. She admits She got the address from their academy master. She wants to know why he has been skipping his nightly duties. The master could not reach him for days. Alistair coldly tells her to leave, stating he is in no mood for her games. But Alara begs him to wait. Irritated, Alistair asks what she could possibly want. She says he is acting like a completely different person lately. Alistair scoffs, asking what she could possibly know about him. Did she truly think they were ever actual friends? He spits out that she would never even dare to look at him if they were not forced together. And that is where we leave it. Alistair just burned the only bridge he had left. Because of that, she should just disappear and never come near him again. Alara stands there in complete silence. She cries out that he is heartless, saying she only came because she was truly worried with no ulterior motives. Hayden replies coldly that her feelings do not matter and tells her to vanish from his sight as she walks away. You and I are watching a man haunted by his past, regretting how he pushed away the only girl he ever loved. He had to flee back then, but now the scene shifts to the present where Hayden is still trapped in this nightmare. A sentinel ignites his alchemical fire, shouting for the boy to move back just as he spots a bone exoskeleton. He yells that one of the monsters is here, but his screams fill the air as the group watches in horror. From across the hall, a terrifying new beast crawls out, a twisted variant of the cursed blight they all feared. The lead knight looks down and sees his comrade lying cold on the stones, and he moves with desperate speed. Drawing his heavy crossbow, he unloads a barrage at the beast, but the creature lunges straight for the terrified men. The guards panic as their steel fails to bite into the monster, and their captain screams for them to retreat. They need to flee this cursed hall right now, but they must signal the citadel before the darkness swallows them. Everyone bolts for the exit, but this monster is not about to let its prey escape into the night so easily. It hunts them down, forcing a guard to blast more alchemical fire to stall the beast, but then disaster strikes. The fire dies as his fuel tank hits empty, and seeing the beast on the stairs, he offers himself as bait. He tells them to run while he stalls, as the group reaches a courtyard and frantically tries to signal the fortress. Julian demands to know how the guards knew about the blighted ones, but the captain just looks at him in confusion. An old veteran mutters that he has fought many beasts, but these bone creatures are something he truly hates facing in battle. Now watch closely, because Julian senses these soldiers are hiding a dark secret that could get them all killed. The knight pulls off his helm, ignoring the question, and begins chanting into a message crystal for help. He begs the citadel guard for rescue, before explaining that even they were in the dark about these monsters. They had no idea where the blight started, but the high command learned the truth before the common folk. The captain reveals that the corruption spread far faster than predicted, and the details are worse than anyone imagined. Hidden alchemists were trying to weaponize the plague, and this monster is a terrifying result of those forbidden experiments. This beast is different, unlike the usual blighted ones who just turn into soft, rotting piles of flesh. Instead, these grow hardened bone armor all over their bodies, making them a nightmare for any knight to strike down. The blight has fused deep within their skeletal structure, making them nearly immune to regular steel and common fire spells. Alchemical fire will not stop them, and the captain warns that their supply of magical fuel is already completely gone. Julian realizes there must be even deadlier evolutions lurking in the shadows, just as the guard mentions more fused bodies. You and I see Baxter snap, demanding why they kept this secret while their lives were on the line. He shouts that if he knew the truth, he never would have brought his friends into this death-trap castle. A message crackles through, informing the captain that the royal army is on the way to provide much-needed help. They are ordered to stay put, but Baxter is only concerned about his lost friends still trapped inside those walls. The captain tells him to give up, claiming a search mission is impossible while the monsters are still on the prowl. He says there is no way they are still alive, which causes Baxter to explode in a fit of pure rage. He tells the knight to shut his mouth, as Julian asks if they can resume the hunt once they rearm. Julian declares that if the soldiers will not help him, he will head back into the darkness to search all alone. The captain snaps back, telling him to wait for the army and asking how many men must die for his arrogance. Suddenly, a communication crystal rings out, and the group freezes as Julian answers the call from an unknown, distant voice. Someone in a nearby room asks if they are looking for the lost girls, while the other teens use oil for fire. They torch the blighted ones, but 𝒐𝒗 yells to douse the flames before the whole tower burns down around them. 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒍𝒚𝒑𝒔𝒆 senses something and bolts, shouting that more beasts are waiting for them on the upper floors of the building. His friend asks if he is sure, and seeing 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒍𝒚𝒑𝒔𝒆 realizes the boy is a perfect supernatural scout. Reaching the top floor, the hero hesitates at the door, gripped by a strange and agonizing pain he cannot explain. This sensation is far worse than before, but they burst inside only to find a blighted soul begging for release. Trust me, you and I are about to see just how dark this story gets when 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒍𝒚𝒑𝒔𝒆 stops the killing blow. All right, stick with me. Arthur's baffled. How's this cursed man talking without any life force left in him? As the lad gets closer, he feels a familiar stinging in his hand, the same pain from the fused monster. Arthur calls out to the figure, asking if they can hear what he says, while warning them he's armed with bright, holy fire. The twisted soul just asks if the boy was the first to arrive there. Seeing the horror, one of the squires flees. He flees the room, retching and questioning why his friend is actually speaking to that hideous, rotting nightmare right now. The creature begs the boy to end its misery with the flames. Now, watch this tension build. Arthur makes a deal. He'll grant the mercy of fire, but only if the monster explains how he manages to stay conscious despite the dark curse. Instead, it crawls toward Arthur, whispering that the fusion is inevitable, and he will soon devour every single one of his friends. Furious, Arthur hurls his torch, yelling at the beast to stop spewing its vile and lying filth. Outside, 𝒐𝒗 is convinced Arthur's tainted. He swears he'll strike down anyone who dares to go near the cursed boy. 𝒖𝒐𝒗 asks 𝑴𝒐𝒃 what he thinks of this. 𝒃 says he doesn't think a plague this dark can ever be truly cleansed. The group decides to run away immediately because the king's guard is closing in on their position right now. 𝒐𝒗 checks his scrying stone. He realizes his peers think he's safe, but in reality, he is being watched like an animal. He wonders if the sentinels suspect him. Suddenly, 𝒐𝒗 falls terribly ill, his body burning with the dark rot of the plague. Seeing this, the knights prepare to report him, but Lord Alistair steps in, wanting to inspect the boy personally. After a quick look, the Lord claims the boy is fine, but says he wants to have a private little chat with him. A guard questions his authority, but the others back down. Alistair sits and asks if the boy is feeling nauseous. 𝒐𝒗 is confused that the man isn't wearing a protective charm and demands to know exactly who he is. Alistair just smiles, telling the lad he's the only one who can truly save him from this dark fate. Meanwhile, the Watch captures Arthur and his crew. They demand a full report on any other children hiding in the shadows. Gwen tells her friend the others escaped. Now, pay attention here, Arthur's trying to keep a level head. As long as the knights don't find the mark on him, he thinks they might actually survive this night. A prisoner stands up furiously, shouting at the guards for threatening and treating honest citizens like common criminals. A knight levels his crossbow, ordering the man to back off, but the villager keeps coming, fueled by pure rage. Without hesitation, the soldier fires. He warns they'll kill anyone who is even suspected of carrying the cursed rot from now on. He then points his bolt at Arthur, demanding to know where the rest of his little rebel group is. Terrified, the protagonist raises his hands, swearing he has no idea where his friends have run off to. On the cobblestone streets, patrolling knights realize they're being stalked by something far worse than men. Back at the camp, 𝒐𝒗 asks how Alistair could possibly help him. Does he even have a cure? The man asks if the boy doesn't trust him, claiming he's only there to help those touched by the plague. 𝒐𝒗 gets angry, thinking this man is just another pawn of the king sent to deceive and betray him in the end. He demands proof of his infection, bragging that he's the nephew of a high lord where everyone knows his family name well. Lord Alastair just laughs, finding the boy's arrogance quite amusing given the death sentence on his arm. He stands and touches the boy's shoulder. Instantly, the sickness flares up again, more violent than ever before. The Lord is impressed by the reaction. He admits he enjoys watching his own kind die like dogs in the mud. He explains that witnessing this agony makes him feel as if he's being healed by their very suffering. Alastair warns that no one escapes Oakhaven alive. He wonders what kind of cruel fate he should deal the boy next. In the city, the army fights back with magical fire. It's strange, because all these surrounding areas were supposedly already cleansed. Seeing the chaos, the elder tells the teens to get up and move before the shadows swallow them whole. One man's scepter fails, and a beast lunges, sinking its teeth into him before anyone can react. A fellow knight watches in horror as his comrade turns. They realize they must retreat now or face certain death. As they flee, a beggar tells Arthur to pull himself together and start running much faster if he wants to survive. Exhausted, Arthur tells the others to go ahead without him. Gwen can't believe the boy is actually giving up now. But Arthur can feel it. The rot is moving toward his brain. His own body is somehow calling the monsters to him. And trust me, you and I are about to see the true cost of that dark connection. All right, you and I are about to witness Arthur recall a dark omen at the spire lift. A creature ascended as Silas died alongside his parasite, and corruption began to cling to the stone. He realizes the blighted send a psychic signal to gather the pack when they are in danger. If Arthur stays, the horde will hunt the entire group, though Gwen insists they remain together. Arthur tells them to flee, admitting he forgives Gwen for abandoning him during the initial plague. He tells her to stop the act of protecting him, while William argues for staying together. Arthur still believes his solitude is their only hope, so the group retreats as time runs out. Reaching a cellar, Arthur regrets his communication crystal is low on mana and worries for his mother. With royal guards hunting him and beasts closing in, the corruption in his blood signals his end. A knight appears at the door, watching him. Meanwhile, Sir Kay drinks a potion from Master Leo. Leo warns the alchemical brew has agonizing side effects, making Kay wonder why he is helping. Leo says to look outside. The royal guards were once noble, but now they are enemies. Kay uses his crystal to call Arthur's mother. Arthur believes separating was the only way to safety. In this world, abandonment is just survival. Knights press an old woman for the girl's location. Now pay attention. She only heard the echo of boots fleeing through the dark hallway. The knight demands to know the direction. She claims the manor was empty until the running started. The girls flee, terrified that the blighted Silas is still hunting them through the corridors. The knight offers an escort to safety. Hearing this, Seth grows anxious for Sophie's well-being. Sirhan tells the boy not to worry, because reinforcements will arrive to save them all. A knight's frantic plea for help is sent via crystal as the plague breaches their defenses. The call is cut short when a beast invades his post. Scouts hunt for the teenagers. Milo asks what to do since Sophie and Arthur were taken, but Seth says they aren't their problem. Ja argues that Arthur's power would be an advantage. Seth snaps at her for talking such nonsense. Ja is irritated, claiming she doesn't want Arthur around because of the secrets he hides. William stops to catch his breath. Sophie asks if his blade wound from the sanctuary is hurting. A man checks his side, finding broken ribs that William tried to hide from the group. Arthur hides in a shop with Sophie. She says this feels exactly like their spire escape. She asks why this nightmare happened to them and vows to never forget this journey. Arthur was excited for the academy pilgrimage, but the beasts ruined his dreams of a simple life. You and I see the danger. Arthur enters a burning manor where the air is suffocating. He thinks he is handling the fear well, remembering how Julian fought against the monsters. Arthur enters the burning building where the smoke is thick. It feels far too quiet. Someone called for help. but the maze-like halls make finding the source nearly impossible. Sophie appears behind him, refusing to let him face the fire and the beasts alone. The knight tells the old woman to wait for backup as the chaos continues to spread. Gwen tells Seth they should check the nearby ruins for their missing companions. Arthur recalls Silas's death and the hive mind that connects all these cursed creatures. He knows the signal he carries will bring death to anyone who stands by his side. Gwen's heart aches at his choice. Arthur watches them leave, his soul heavy with isolation. The knight at the door draws his steel, his eyes cold and devoid of any mercy. Kay feels the alchemical potion burning through his veins as he stares at the dying city. He reaches out to Arthur's mother through the crystal, hoping to offer some small comfort. Arthur moves through the smoke, his vision blurring as the plague seeds take deep root. The building groans as the fire spreads, threatening to bury everyone inside the complex ruins. And that's where we leave it, trust me. You're going to want to see what happens next. All right, you and I are diving into a nightmare at Blackwood Manor, as Arthur heads into the flames to find his friends. He burns a monster, crawling on the ground. Most of the creatures in the hall are already scorched and perfectly still. Arthur says the danger has passed, but Sophie is trembling with fear at the sight of the charred, infected bodies around them. Arthur tells the young girl that she can leave if she is feeling uncomfortable, promising to find their missing allies alone and return soon. But Sophie refuses to leave. She insists on staying by his side until they find their friends, despite the horror surrounding them in this hall. She wonders if Ben is hiding nearby. Arthur believes they will find him if they simply follow the path of the fire. Sophie asks if the captain and their friends are safe. Arthur hopes so, because if they are infected, he must burn them too. As he walks, he prays he does not have to do the same thing he was forced to do to poor John earlier. Suddenly, the teenagers find a wounded soldier bleeding on the floor. Arthur realizes this is likely the man who called for their desperate help. The soldier gasps for them to run away. It was all a trap to lure more survivors away from the main base. A creature emerges in the hall. Now pay attention here, because this is where everything turns into a fight for survival. Arthur defends himself, but the monster attacks. Outside, a knight stands before the manor wondering about its strange structure. He removes his helmet because he is feeling suffocated. The man stops at the heavy front door in total hesitation. He questions whether he must enter the burning building, and a cold sense of unease begins to wash over his soul. Inside, Arthur is frozen before the beast. He realizes the monster is actually reacting to the dark virus in his blood. He seizes the moment and blasts the creature with flames. Sophie screams, asking if he is all right after that blast. The fallen soldier begs them to flee. One burst of fire will not be enough to kill a beast like that. He tells them to reach the lower basement where the rest of the royal guard is waiting. Sophie helps Arthur stand so they can escape. The monster lunges again, but Arthur uses the flamethrower to hold it back while they scramble toward the stairs. Sophie asks if her friend is safe. Arthur tells her they must focus on escaping the building with their lives first. They reach the bottom and find a girl kneeling. It is Mary. Sophie rushes to her, asking where the others are hiding. You saw that coming, didn't you? Arthur sees the danger from afar and screams for Sophie to get back immediately. Mary stands up, revealing her gray skin and empty eyes. She is no longer the friend Sophie once knew. Sophie freezes as she remembers their happy times together. The infected girl lunges forward to kill her. Arthur reacts with lightning speed, bathing the monster in fire before it can reach Sophie. Sophie collapses in tears. Arthur tells her she must look away from the charred remains of her former best friend. She turns away, sobbing as she wipes her eyes. Arthur feels a wave of pity for the poor girl and her loss. But Sophie cannot stop crying. Suddenly, the creature from the hallway appears again, tracking the scent of Arthur's own blood. They realize they are surrounded. Arthur tells Sophie to stay behind him while he readies his heavy weapon. Sophie asks what his plan is. He says he will use the flamethrower to clear a path. As he aims the weapon, Arthur notices the beast is hesitating. It seems to realize that the fire can actually kill it. He senses the core virus inside the beast's mouth. Suddenly, Ben and his squad arrive to save them with their guns blazing. They toss Molotovs to create a wall of fire. Captain Thorne shouts for the teenagers to escape this place now. Arthur refuses to flee. He knows they must burn the virus directly in the face to end this nightmare. To do that, he must get dangerously close to the beast. The creature begins to flee from the heat. Arthur tries to follow, but a soldier grabs his arm. He demands to know where the boy found a flamethrower. Arthur says he found it near the dead. He insists they must finish the monster before it evolves. The captain tells Arthur to hand over the weapon. Arthur asks how many rounds the captain has left. The man says his weapon only holds 6 shots, and 4 are already spent. There are only 2 bullets remaining in the clip. Arthur realizes he must handle this himself. The group heads back up the stairs to hunt the beast before it can strike again. Arthur asks the soldier how many bullets he can fire. The man says he has 6 rounds in his pistol. He has already fired 4. Arthur understands he must finish this fight with only 2 shots remaining. The group starts climbing the stairs to find the beast. Captain Thorne warns of the danger ahead. If the infected monster lives much longer, the Duchess on the upper floor will be slaughtered long before reinforcements can arrive to save her. Arthur is right, but the danger is real. You and I must see what happens next in this cursed manor. All right, you and I are about to witness a hero's final stand in this blighted kingdom. Beckett sprints past the knights to set a dangerous trap. He knows it will flee as soon as the alchemical fire is unleashed, while Arthur claims he finally knows where the beast is hiding. Beckett charges the blighted husk and tosses a fire flask, but the creature lunges back at him with lethal speed. Now watch this. Tristan intervenes with his fire staff. He is confident because he finally understands the dark patterns of these monsters. However, it seems this specific horror has completely fused with its human host, making it far stronger than a normal husk. Arthur warns that striking the body is useless, since the viral core is hidden deep inside the monster's throat. Tristan follows the plan, but he is suddenly struck through the chest by a jagged claw while Helen hides in a nearby room. A royal guardsman finds Helen and asks if she is hurt, but seeing Tristan in trouble, the knights open fire on the beast. Even with a mortal wound, Tristan levels his crossbow for one final shot, knowing he must close the distance to deal a killing blow. The infected monster is engulfed in flames, and the group finally rushes to Tristan's side to check his fatal wounds. He gasps for them to stay back, warning that the horror is still breathing and the danger is far from over. I know what you're thinking, but he demands a weapon to die alongside the monster, using those heavy oil barrels. Beckett is devastated, reminding Tristan of his oath to help find young Rosaline, but the knight's strength is fading fast. Helping him is impossible, and the second they remove that jagged claw from his chest, he will die. Arthur tearfully apologizes for leading them here, but the dying knight tells the lad there is absolutely nothing to forgive. He only survived this long because of these brave teenagers, and without them, he would have surrendered to the dark long ago. The monster begins to twitch again, and the guardsman hands Tristan his blade, honored to have met such a brave man. The others are forced to flee toward the tower where the girls were last seen, leaving their comrade to his fate. Seeing Tristan's sacrifice, Beckett breaks down in tears as the knight reloads for one last, desperate shot at the creature. Before pulling the trigger, he remembers his long-lost fiancée, weeping with the knowledge that they will finally be reunited in the afterlife. While escaping, the group runs into Helen and the guardsman, and Beckett frantically asks where the rest of their friends are hiding. The girl bolts in a panic, but Beckett chases after her until she collapses onto the cold stone floor in exhaustion. Beckett asks where the others are, but Helen just weeps and screams that none of this was her fault. He demands an explanation, and the guard confirms that she appears to be the only one who made it out alive. The scout checked the entire wing and found no one, while Helen cries that she never wanted to leave their carriage. She points a finger at Beckett, blaming him and his reckless hope for every single death they have suffered. The boy rushes to the room where Helen hid and finds a young girl collapsed on the floor. Guinevere tells him that Beckett pushed himself to the limit just to find where the girls had gone. She reveals that Rosaline was ambushed by a monster and did not make it, leaving Beckett completely shattered. Finding the cold body of his friend, the boy can only weep while Arthur returns to Sela's with news of Tristan's sacrifice. The old man sighs, saying that those who remain must now live with twice the strength to honor those who fell. Later, Arthur confronts Helen about why she ran, and the girl's mind drifts back to the moment they first left the carriage. She remembers the driver's warning that they would regret stepping into this nightmare. Trust me, he was absolutely right. After witnessing such horror, she admits that her heart had hardened, and she could no longer trust a single soul. Back then, a monster had chased them into a safe room, and Mary had barely managed to bolt the heavy door. After the dust settled, the girls decided to venture out for fuel, only to be ambushed by another lurking creature. The beast was slain before it could reach Mary, or at least, that is what they all desperately wanted to believe. Rosaline asked if her friend had been bitten, but the girls swore on her life that the monster had not touched her. Helen tells the group they were fools to believe her, because Mary had been lying through her teeth the entire time. Arthur realizes this was just the dormant period, since the scourge doesn't always transform its host immediately, and anyone in that situation would lie. They would definitely deny being blighted by the scourge, just as Arthur explains the terrifying dormant phase to Helen. He tells her that the scourge was just waiting for the right moment to erupt from within Mary's body. He knows there are likely many others in this very building who are blighted and do not even realize their time is up. He tells her to stop blaming Beckett and instead realize that he is the only reason she is still breathing. Without him and the knights, you and I know those beasts would have finished her off a long time ago. All right, you and I are diving back in, where Alara remembers Clara's desperate cries and her faith that the night would return. Meanwhile, Julian starts wondering if more of those blighted monsters are lurking in the castle, finding it strange that the beast fled earlier. He was certain he could kill it, but now he is questioning if he can truly face the other horrors that await them. Alara mentions their promise to reunite at the sanctuary, but the young knight just stares at her, wondering what she is even talking about. Since the magical messages resumed, the girls have been sharing intel, and apparently the best place to be is the High Citadel. There are plenty of storehouses there, and more importantly, it is an isolated fortress far away from the chaos of the city. She admits that if she had not been found, she would have headed there herself to survive until the end of the winter. Thomas tells her there was nothing about this on the messenger scrolls, but Alara reveals there is a hidden group for girls. Lady Catherine created a secret network that excluded all the boys, just as the royal guards arrived with the elderly Duchess in tow. The captain orders his men to bring Clara to safety, while Julian tells the others they will soon be leaving for the shelter. But Julian makes a shocking declaration. He refuses to go to the safe zone, standing his ground against the captain's direct orders. The man insists it is his duty to protect them, so Sophie joins the conversation, explaining their friends are still near the High Citadel. Now watch this. She tries to convince the guard that they must head there immediately to rescue the others before it is too late. Sophie promises they will return soon, and the captain finally allows it, though he insists a soldier must accompany the teenagers. Before leaving, Rose asks if Julian is all right, as his arm was badly wounded during that brutal clash with the blighted beast. A knight urges them to hurry because they need to move now, while Julian believes he can resist the plague and reach the citadel. Suddenly Arthur appears, asking if the scoundrel is leaving without him, and vows to join the quest to destroy the dark plague. He joins the group as they head into the streets, while their soldier escort questions if these children have completely lost their minds. Sophie explains they are simply worried about their friends, and the young knight notes they are lucky to have a warrior's protection. Without an escort, they would not get far, but Julian is distracted, looking at his arm and noticing the wound has completely healed. He wonders what this dark infection is doing to his body, as the group spots black smoke rising from the castle courtyard. When they reach the area, they discover the carriages are all on fire, and Julian realizes he can now sense the monster's presence. The entire courtyard is crawling with them, and Julian quickly warns the others that they need to leave this place before they are surrounded. You and I can see the tension rising as a blighted beast pounces, but Arthur quickly strikes it down with a fire bomb. The knight screams in frustration at the boy's reckless behavior, but Arthur does not stop, burning every monster that dares to cross him. After clearing the area, Arthur keeps marching toward the citadel, telling the teenagers that every squad needs a ruthless man like him. He tells them to keep following, because their knight friend will not lift a finger if one of them actually ends up dying. Elara takes the chance to tell the group they are getting close to the citadel, while Arthur remembers finding Clara's broken body. Julian approaches him, saying he understands the grief and asking if it would not be better to avoid this dangerous path for now. Arthur snaps back that they cannot keep hiding, and that killing every monster on sight is the only way to truly stay safe. He then asks how long Julian intends to keep running away from the fight, but Julian simply tells him to do things his way. However, Julian warns him that if he ever gets infected alone, he must remember not to harm any of their friends nearby. Arthur finds his friend increasingly irritating as the group continues their steep climb toward the massive stone towers of the citadel. The soldier chats with the girls, commenting on how kind they are for heading into such a cursed place for their kin. Sophie laughs and thanks him for the compliment, but suddenly the knight hears a strange rustling coming from the thick bushes. He draws his weapon in a panic, but it is only a squirrel, leaving the man sighing in relief as he relaxes. He tells the kids there is nothing to fear, making Sophie and Julian laugh at how the brave knight was just terrified. The soldier is frustrated that Sophie is speaking with that boy, especially after Julian cried like a child during their last battle. After a while, Sophie stops to look at the scenery, and Julian asks what she is doing when they need to keep moving. She wants a good memory of this place, knowing they should have been here taking group portraits with their friends instead. Sophie stops to admire the view, and Julian asks why she is stalling when they must move fast. She simply wants a good memory of this forest, since they should have been painting here with their friends instead. They should have been taking grand portraits together, if only the world had not fallen into this dark, terrible nightmare. Julian remains silent, imagining his entire class standing together for a beautiful group portrait on this very mountain path. Sophie notes the irony of returning to the citadel, and honestly, you and I can't wait to see what happens next. All right, you and I are watching a leaner lie to keep the others safe. She can't bear more death. Arthur reassures the girl that everything will be fine. If the others reached 𝑺𝒖𝒓𝒗𝒊𝒗𝒐𝒓 Tower, it should be safe there. Still, she's worried. She feels that once they reach safety, this whole nightmare will simply restart for them. Arthur says they'll worry about that later. Suddenly, bone-chilling screams echo from the scouts at the front group. They rush ahead to find the path choked by corrupted spores. The commander wonders why many monsters are here. Watch closely, Bennett isn't waiting. He grabs a fire flask and tells the others to move back now. They burn through the creatures and reach 𝑺𝒖𝒓𝒗𝒊𝒗𝒐𝒓. The commander warns the teenagers to look around for danger. Spores could be lurking above, but inside the dark halls, a massive, horrific creature is already waiting for them. Before entering, Arthur feels a strange chill and looks back. Catherine asks if he is doing okay right now. He claims he's fine and says they should keep moving. Still, he can't shake that eerie feeling he felt. The commander examines the stairs. William asks what he's looking at, and the man explains he's checking spore growth. It's possible to estimate their spread. He can tell when and how many spores will start to spread out. Without a host, the spore's color becomes muddy. If the blight goes too long without food, it slows down. These movements are sluggish. Looking at these stairs, they've been without a host for at least 2 days now. You and I might wonder if it's safe. Well, it's better than zones where the blight is active. Usually in places this quiet, even the rats are gone. He explains that once small hosts are all consumed, the spores emerge to hunt humans for food. The infected constantly search for energy to fuel their dark mutation. If they don't find food, they start fusing together. These creatures are developing survival instincts as they slowly evolve. He wonders why his scouts haven't contacted them. At the tower, the group is trapped by monsters outside. The area seems deserted, but Alina insists her friends are here. The commander is getting irritated by her claims. He thinks this was all a trick. Suddenly, they encounter a creature inside the building and flee in terror. As they run, he tells them to call their friends. Alina says she hasn't been able to reach anyone. The soldier says if they can't make contact, they're leaving. Arthur begs him to wait and check other floors. The man says they should be grateful they made it this far, but Arthur refuses to leave without checking. He promises not to put the group in danger. The commander agrees to go with him, ordering others wait. They reach the lower floor and find no spores. Arthur asks to explore alone, making the man laugh loudly. He asks if the boy has a death wish. Meanwhile, on the stairs, Catherine asks Alina if anyone answered. She wants to try calling herself. Bennett decides he's going to check the upper floor again, ignoring previous orders. His friend reminds him the soldier told them to stay. Bennett snaps back, refusing to take orders from him. He promises to be back soon. Upstairs, he starts searching the kitchens for materials to make more fire flasks. A few weren't enough to stop those monsters. He needs a much bigger fire. Suddenly, he finds a strongbox. Catherine is worried they're all separating. She hopes they find their friends safe, but Alina says it's not happening. She reveals that none of her friends are there. Catherine is confused and asks where the others went then. Alina stays silent. Catherine starts to panic and tries to find Arthur, but her friend grabs her arm tightly. She tells her not to go because the others won't accept her. Her friends said not to bring anyone. Only they could go, so they should leave now. Arthur asks the commander why he's acting so strange. The man laughs and says Arthur must think he's easy to fool. Did he really think he believed him? He knew the bit about looking for friends was a lie. He thinks Arthur is just terrified of the citadel. He asks him if he's ready to die right now. Arthur points his crossbow at the boy in a threat. Arthur falls to his knees, begging for mercy. He cries out that he made a mistake and is sorry. The knight laughs, saying the boy must think he is easy to fool. Arthur is caught in his lie. Did he really think the commander would believe that fake story about searching for his missing noble friends? You and I just witnessed a total breakdown. Arthur is actually just terrified of going to the citadel. The man points his crossbow at the boy, asking if he wants to die. Arthur falls, begging for mercy. He screams that he made a mistake, but the soldier starts laughing, saying he was only joking with him. Bridge at night, Bridge 1. All right, you and I are about to see if this alliance holds or if blood spills right here. Thorne says if he wanted Julian dead, he'd have shot him long ago. He tells the lad to remember who saved his life and start showing some respect. Julian just lies there, trying to recall any such debt of honor. He realizes he has no memory of this man saving him. Suddenly, he shouts a warning for the commander to be careful because a grotesque monster is nearing. Meanwhile, Alina is still trying to force Sloane to follow her to meet some noble friends, but the girl insists they stay and wait for the others. A horrific scream suddenly echoes up from the lower chambers of the keep. Sloane freezes, terrified, wondering what on earth could have made that sound. Alina starts sobbing, claiming her own allies have betrayed her trust. It is a calculated move to hide the darkness she is about to unleash on her friend. Then she shoves the girl down the stone steps. Below, Julian and Thorne find the fallen Sloane and yell for her to get up before it is too late. As she scrambles to her feet, she comes face to face with a nightmare. It is her friend, the very first one to be turned by the blight. Alina flees the scene in a panic, reaching the iron doors of the carriage depot. She bangs on the wood, begging the survivors inside to let her in. Thorne orders the youths to run for their lives. While fleeing, Julian remembers Captain Alistair's advice to stay perfectly still when encountering the blighted in the dark. He had learned much from that harsh lesson. After finally losing the beast, the protagonist tells the group that the man had managed to escape the floor. Julian looks around and asks where Alina went. Sloane explains that their companion was in a state of total shock and simply ran off into the night. Bridge at night, Bridge 2. Now pay attention to this guy. He's about to walk right into a trap. A young noble asks Alina how the situation looks outside the gates. She lies and says the streets are still crawling with infected cells. The boy says they are safe for now since this hall has food and supplies. He tells Alina to call out if she needs anything, and then leaves. Alina begins to question why this young man is being so incredibly friendly toward her. Soon after, another girl approaches, asking if Alina's magic amulet still has any charge. Alina snaps back, demanding to know what she wants with her device. The girl asks to borrow it because her own amulet has run dry. Alina refuses, claiming her own battery is also running dangerously low at the moment. The girl insists they need to check her device, or they can't trust her. Alina asks why on earth she should let them snoop through her personal messages. The teenager threatens to throw her out into the cold if she doesn't comply. Reluctantly, Alina hands it over, and they begin to scroll through her recent memories. The girl gasps when she finds horrifying photos of Lady Margaret's corpse. Terrified, she demands to know what really happened to their companion in those dark woods. Alina tries to justify the images, claiming it's not what they think. A boy appears amidst the chaos, asking what they should do with the kitchen's food. He worries that if they leave without paying, it would be considered theft. Alina starts hitting him, screaming that none of those old rules matter anymore in this hell. Suddenly, Thorne and the other teenagers arrive with urgent news from the capital. A messenger just arrived saying that a breakthrough has finally been made for them. Because of the complaints from the high houses, the kingdom is lifting the blockades. People are already gathering at the main station to find a way home. If they can reach that location, the kids will finally escape this nightmare. Sloane takes advantage of the brief peace to pull her friends into a hug. The girls ask if she knows what happened to the others who were lost. She starts crying, admitting that most of their group didn't survive the initial blight. Bridge at night, Bridge 3. You and I both know Julian is carrying a heavy burden right now. Let's see how he handles this guilt. He wonders if his friend were still here. Soon after, the boy from before approaches Julian to apologize for his earlier behavior. Julian asks what he means, confused by the sudden change in the young man. He explains he feels terrible for not opening the door for their teammate earlier. He says the stress and isolation were making everyone lose their minds. Julian tells him it is okay because he has witnessed far worse horrors outside the walls. The young man laughs, unable to imagine what Julian truly endured. Meanwhile, on the stairs, Alina is weeping with pure rage. She's furious those girls didn't even let her explain the photos or tell her side of the story. She wonders why they would treat her so cruelly. Arthur takes the chance to search for anything useful he can find in the abandoned tavern's kitchen. That same girl appears, asking him what he is trying to steal. She comments that she almost mistook him for a common thief in the shadows. The boy asks if she's looking for a fight and tells her to watch her mouth. He warns her to be far more careful with what she says. He then asks why the group is lugging around so many heavy bottles of spirits. The girl explains these were the bottles Cedric had secretly smuggled along. To keep people from finding them, they had been carrying the drinks everywhere. Soon, she realizes Arthur is turning the spirits into deadly fire pots for combat. She asks who taught him such a dangerous skill, but he refuses to answer. She notes that since he's using her bottles, she deserves to know his master. Arthur remembers Captain Alistair and says he learned it from a man he once knew. After that, the commander asks the entire group to gather around. The boy asks if she is looking for trouble and warns her to be more careful. He tells her she should watch what she says to him. After that, he asks why the group is lugging around so many heavy bottles of spirits. The girl explains these were the bottles Cedric smuggled for the trip. To keep people from finding out, She had been carrying the drinks around this whole time. Soon, she realizes Arthur is making fire pots out of them. She asks who taught him such a dangerous craft, but he refuses to give her an answer. She notes that since he is using her bottles, she knows. She wants to know who taught him. Arthur remembers Captain Alistair and tells her he learned it from a man he once knew a long time ago. The young woman stares at him in silence for a moment. Then, Thorne calls out to the group, asking everyone to gather their things and assemble now. Bridge at night, Bridge 4, and trust me, you and I will never forget what happens next. Thorne then calls the group to gather for their next move. All right, you and I are about to watch Gwen's spiral as the sun sets, desperate to find Hannah, who is now cornered. Sophie confronts the blighted creature, asking why Hannah changed so much during their years at the academy together. She remembers when highborn bullies stole her friend's journal, revealing Hannah's secret wish for the entire house to perish. When Hannah found out, her rage was absolute, but later the boys taunted her with the very words she had written. Their bitter memory is shattered as the group comes rushing back inside, pursued by a horde of the cursed dead. Safe for now, Arthur warns the others to stay alert as they navigate the dark corridors of the grand estate. As they pass the staircase, Arthur feels a chill, leading them upward to find Hannah barricaded against her infected companion. She desperately tries to lock the door, but the girl on the other side has stopped responding to human voices. The twisted creature begins squeezing through the gaps, and Hannah scrambles back in terror as the rotting hands reach out. Benjamin rushes to her aid, stunned that this monstrosity is still moving after they supposedly burned the beast to ash. He hurls a fire flask, and the creature shrieks in agony as it burns, yet it somehow remains standing amidst the flames. The group watches in horror as the monster tears its own burning flesh away. Now pay attention. It gets even worse. The infected thing flees, letting out a bone-chilling scream the moment it sees them, preparing another volley of alchemical fire. Following the trail, Benjamin shudders at that sound, while the captain wonders if these beasts are evolving new sonic attacks. Arthur feels the cursed cells in his own hand, pulsing. Is the creature calling out for reinforcements to swarm their position? Hannah begs for rescue, but Benjamin is disgusted, asking how she dares seek help after abandoning them to the horde. She claims she was only following Lord Cedric's orders, who made it clear these outsiders were not welcome in his lands. Then, our hero demands to know why she has secret sketches of Lady Mary hidden away in her personal belongings. Hannah begins to tremble and ends up silent. The captain levels his heavy crossbow, threatening to fire if she moves. Benjamin is stunned by the soldier's coldness, questioning why he would turn his weapon on a young girl in distress. The captain snaps that it is already too late, fearing she was tainted by the monster's touch during the struggle upstairs. He refuses to risk 10 healthy lives for one who might carry the plague, a brutal choice in this dark age. Hannah pleads for her life, promising to reveal every secret she knows about Lady Mary if they only spare her. She admits she sent word to her secret circle hoping for a rescue, but even as she denies it, Arthur knows. I know what you're thinking, but Arthur sees a truth no one else can. The girl is already far past saving. He tells the group that the blight cells already entered her body, while she was struggling to hold that door shut. Benjamin asks when he could have possibly seen such a thing, while the captain demands confirmation before he pulls the trigger. Arthur stands firm, insisting they must leave her behind immediately or risk the entire group falling to the curse's spread. Suddenly, the captain decides to end it, firing a bolt straight into Hannah to ensure she never turns into a monster. Benjamin lunges at the man, screaming that he is insane. The captain fights back, warning the boy to let go or die. He asks if the lad has any idea how many brothers-in-arms he has lost because of hesitation in the heat of battle. Arthur stands in pure shock as he watches the girl's bolt-riddled body collapse onto the cold stone floor. The sound of the shot draws a beast toward them, forcing the group to abandon the room and flee for their lives. With her dying breath, Hannah curses the hero, just as they discover the rest of their camp is engulfed in flames. The captain bellows for survivors through the smoke, while Benjamin turns on Arthur with fire in his eyes and pure rage. He accuses the hero of condemning a girl he simply didn't like, asking if he enjoyed playing judge and executioner today. Arthur hits back, swearing he never lies about the curse, but the boy demands to know how he could be so certain. The captain barks for them to silence their bickering, as the rest of the surviving squires finally emerge from the ruins. The hero looks his friend in the eye, asking what he would have done if he held the same dark knowledge. Would he stay silent and let the plague kill them all, while back in the room, the monster consumes Hannah's remains? Even as she is eaten, Hannah's lingering spirit seems to radiate pure hatred toward the classmates who left her to die. The hero keeps pressing Benjamin, asking if he would really choose a lie over the safety of every living soul left. Infuriated, the boy snaps back, demanding actual proof of her infection, just as Gwen arrives and asks for her friend. Gwen finds the group and asks if they saved her friend, but then she catches Arthur's haunted expression. "You and I just witnessed a tragic end." The captain coldly tells the young squires that Hannah is dead. "Stick with me, because you and I are about to see a tragedy turn into a nightmare." Thorn tells the lad to shut it, because the girl was already tainted by a beast. He asks if they really want to wander these lands with a ticking time bomb. Oliver asks if it is true, but Arthur stays silent and will not meet his eyes. Another girl snaps to just forget it and move on from this foul place. Ben asks if she would say that if she were Alina, but she scoffs. Suddenly, Arthur senses something coming and shouts for everyone to run for their lives. Ben looks back and sees a horrific fusion of infected bodies rising behind them. One girl falls, and the beast begins devouring her as they throw oil jars. Arthur warns the fire is useless because the creature can just shed its flaming skin. Thorn yells at the teens to focus on the monsters blocking their path ahead. A girl is cornered by a monster, but Oliver steps in to save her life. She gets up, mocking him for just trying to look like a hero. Oliver is suddenly struck down, and the girl flees, leaving her friend to die. The monster snarls that he is not tasty enough. Ben regrets that they did not kill her sooner. Ben shouts that they must throw every fire flask they have all at once. Arthur suggests using himself as a lure to draw the infected creature directly into their waiting trap. While fleeing, Thorn keeps firing his crossbow to cover the girls as Arthur grabs some waste bags and a flint. Inside the fort, the group watches as the beasts begin to burn because of the flaming mountain of waste. Thorn praises the boy, noting the flames will keep the beasts from the door. But they are trapped. Now, Alina's twisted form starts seeping through the door cracks. Sophie notices a kitchen nearby and realizes they might have one last chance. Grabbing fuel, she warns her friend that the monster will burn if it enters. Now, pay attention here, because you and I are about to watch the tension in this room finally snap. Arthur draws the monster into the trap, and Sophie remembers his previous sacrifice. He enters the hall to keep the infected busy, while the others prepare. Before being bait, Arthur and Ben had agreed on using the building as layout. The beast will not be able to see the exits once it reaches the far side of the Great Hall. Ben urges Arthur to move faster before he sets the entire corridor ablaze. Arthur dives through just as Ben ignites the hall, blocking the beast's path. On the other side, Thorn lights a fire, hoping the monster finally dies. Seeing the creature is back turned, Ben throws a flaming chair at its head. Arthur says to run. Sophie praises his plan for being so creative. You saw that too, right? Even in this nightmare, Arthur hasn't forgotten the lessons he learned back at the Great Lift. Ben asks how his friend survived the fire, but suddenly, the emergency cisterns activate and drench everything. The water douses the flames, and they realize the monster has survived. Sophie suddenly appears with a burning torch, ready to stand her ground and defend her terrified friends. Thorn mutters that the creature is far too persistent for its own good. The beast moans in agony, blaming the teenagers for its unbearable suffering. Ben tells it to stop pretending to be Alina. It is just a lie. The monster whispers Maria's name, shocking Ben to his core. Thorn orders them to burn the thing now. The monster says she trusts Ben, and then she lunges with a roar to attack Sophie. Arthur throws his own body in front to shield her from the beast, his deadly claws. He feels a strange connection to the monster, his nerves, as if their souls were linked, just like Alistair warned him. Arthur tells Sophie to get back. This is where he and I find out the truth. Stick with me. You and I are about to watch Sir Arthur's world completely shatter as Lady Alara whispers that he is blighted. Before the girl can say more, Arthur uses a flaming branch to set her ablaze, watching as the shadows take her. As his own hand burns in the heat, Alara shrieks that he is infected and there is no hope for him. The entire group stares at their companion with cold, judging eyes as she turns to ash before them in the fire. Without warning, the captain aims his heavy crossbow and fires a bolt directly at our hero, sending him to the floor. Far from the carnage, Lady Seraphina asks Percival if he heard that thunderous noise echoing through the cold night air. The young knight tells her she should be used to the sounds of battle by now, but the girl is worried. The citadel of Northwood is burning, and she wonders who on earth could be foolish enough to start such a fire. Now pay attention. This is where the tension breaks as Julian lunges at the guard, asking if he wants to die too. Sophie kneels by Arthur, desperate to help him, but the knight strikes her and points his weapon at the boy's head. Suddenly, Arthur stands up, leaving everyone wondering how he survived a lethal strike as he points a finger at the captain. He tells them they can try to kill him, just as several monsters emerge from the dark and rush the guard. Sophie asks if he is all right, but notices his gaze is cold and distant, like he is no longer truly human. Arthur collapses, questioning how his life became a nightmare and if they should have stayed away from the capital's high walls. The royal squad finally reaches the manor to save the Duchess, reporting that the blight in the area has been burned. The scout mentions squires in the building who spoke of another group of survivors trapped within the high Northwood citadel. The commander does not know their exact location, but says he has already dispatched a messenger to find the lost souls. The young knight asks the old hermit if he will be safe alone in the wreckage, and the man's silence is enough. The squad prepares to leave as the hermit wanders the ruins, muttering that any dry corner can be called a home. He begins searching for a bottle of spirits, but stumbles upon the cold, lifeless body of the Lady Beatrice instead. He decides to bury her properly, saying she was lucky to have someone like him to tend to her final rest. Once the task is done, he remembers he must also find a place for the remains of the Lady Alara. Julian and the others flee the tower while carrying Arthur, as Sophie wonders if that cruel knight will survive the horde. Julian tells her the man is getting exactly what he deserves, and he will finish him if he follows them. The young man wonders why the monsters only attack the soldier, just as Lady Catherine tells the group to stop. She cannot stop thinking about Alara's warning and asks the group if they heard that Arthur carries the deadly blight. She suggests simply leaving the boy behind. While back at the ruins, the hermit continues to dig a lonely grave. You and I saw this coming. He grumbles about feeling like a madman hiding bodies until a faint cry stops him. Catherine asks Julian why they didn't let the others join them, explaining that one mistake could end their lives. She insists the best choice is to abandon Arthur right here, but a new figure appears and offers to carry him. It is Seraphina, warning that if they want to escape the capital alive, they had better follow her right now. Sophie is stunned to see her friend, but the girl tells her to stop acting like they were ever close. As they flee, she asks why they are wearing those heavy traveling cloaks, and Percival says they had nothing else. The group uses enchanted fire flasks to clear the monsters they encounter as they race toward a place of safety. Upon reaching the sanctuary, Percival seals the heavy doors, and the exhausted teenagers finally take a moment to breathe. Julian asks how she found them, and she says it was easy because they kept setting everything on fire. She admits she didn't expect them to burn the citadel down, as Percival asks if they found Lady Beatrice. Julian falls silent, and Sophie reveals they were too late to save her or any of their other companions. Percival sighs, admitting that the situation has become far more terrible than any of them could have ever imagined. A girl tells them to stop the sad talk because it is ruining the vibe they need for their escape. She says they must reach the gates because the city's magical wards are being lifted by the king. Seraphina asks how they will reach the gates and tells her friend to check the secret maps on her scroll. Percival nods solemnly, knowing their time is running out and their options are very thin. They must move quickly through the shadows before the monsters find their hiding place and tear them all to pieces. And trust me, you and I are about to see exactly what happens when they open that last heavy door. All right, you and I are about to see if our crew can cross the River Thames to reach that heavily guarded outpost. Even reaching the fort meant facing hordes of blighted, so Sophia knew that without Arthur, their journey was basically an impossible mission. A girl laughs, claiming the royal knights would protect them, but Sophia knew those warriors weren't exactly known for their mercy. Selena warns that those guards would likely just point their fire mages and alchemists fire directly at the young woman right now. Part 2 asks why they were taking the blighted Arthur with them, leaving Sophia worried if her dear friend would ever truly wake up. Mara researches the ancient scrolls and realizes that as the curse spreads, only monsters remain with no human essence left inside them. Beckett says that's expected since every drop of life essence had already transformed into those terrifying creatures of the dark forest. He explains they weren't seeing pure essence anymore, only finding blighted people who had managed to fuse into even more powerful forms. Selena explains this means the infection rate was slowing, but the monsters were now acting like predators who needed to hunt for souls. They were also changing their survival tactics, which Beckett saw as a win since it would be easier to track and kill them. Right after, he tells Mara about his fight with a mutated beast, making her wonder if these things could evolve into new forms. Pay attention here, because she fears horrors near the river that even the king's elite knights wouldn't be able to defeat. After that, she visits Arthur's room to see if he'd woken up, admitting they had no way to care for the boy. She only hoped he would survive, knowing that if they handed him over to the royal guards, they would just burn his body to ash. She asks Sophia to alert her when he wakes, while Sophia remembers the exact moment Arthur began to look just like the blighted. She still hopes Arthur returns to normal, wondering if she was just acting kind or feeling guilty for abandoning him back at the tower. After she questions her own heart, Mara checks the map, noting that a blocked bridge means taking a much longer, dangerous route. She tells Beckett they need more fuel as the young woman asks Lady Beatrice if she really planned on leaving with the group. Beatrice responds that they didn't have a better choice, but her friend calls the move stupid since knights were patrolling everywhere nearby. The boys were planning to go without any help, while Beatrice mentions the group heard the knights were killing everyone as a precaution. However, her friend refuses to believe it, claiming the teenagers made it up to protect Arthur. Then she goes quiet and asks the plan. Sophia is checking her gear when she suddenly hears Arthur whispering, questioning where exactly he was at that very moment. She promises they'll go home together, as Selena returns to the room right when our protagonist finally opens his eyes for real. Arthur starts sobbing, thinking he was truly going to die, and thanks his loyal friend for not leaving him behind in that hell. Sophia comforts him, saying everything is fine, as the whole group gathers to see their companion who had miraculously woken up today. You and I can see the relief here, as Beckett says the boy is a beast for actually surviving such a brutal infection. Arthur thanks the boy for carrying him, making the teenager feel awkward. Then Lady Beatrice enters the room with a tough demand. She says they'll decide after Arthur is honest about whether he was truly infected by the dark blight or if he's clean. Her friend gets angry, claiming he'll just lie, but Selena tells the girl to stop the nonsense and move out of her way now. Selena has a better question and tells the boy to answer quickly, without just standing there staring with his eyes wide open. She asks if Arthur is actually immune, while the group searches a nearby store but finds absolutely nothing for their survival journey. Mara tells them to check the back storage area, and when they open the door, a terrifying monster is waiting for them. The boys burn the creature easily and take the supplies. Then Sophia helps the boys carry the heavy food crates out. Selena tells the boy to answer her question quickly, without overthinking it, or just standing there with his eyes wide open. She asks if Arthur was also an immune person, while the group begins searching a nearby store for any survival supplies. Mara tells them to check the storage area in the back, because there might still be some supplies left for them. They encounter a monster, but the boys burn the creature easily and take the food that was hidden in that room. Sophia helps the boys carry the food crates out, as Selena asks Arthur if he can also tell essence and monsters apart. The girl recalls her friend meeting an immune person in the refuge who spoke about the long incubation period of the curse. They talked about how the blight works, and after seeing dormant essence, she started thinking about a new, terrifying hypothesis. She wondered if the immune weren't truly free, but rather the mutation simply hadn't been triggered in their blood, yet for some reason. Arthur answers his friend's question, saying he wasn't sure if he was immune, but he revealed what Leanne told him. She had told him he was special, but the other girl doesn't believe it and asks Beckett if he takes it seriously. After that, she mentions her theory that something is definitely happening between Selena and our hero, because they are always together lately. She thinks something is definitely going on between Selena and our hero, and you and I are about to find out. All right, you and I are about to watch as Miller prepares the group to leave the cursed capital. Suddenly, they spot thugs attacking a man. Miller suggests they call for the others and retreat back to their camp. Back at the refuge, the lady asks what they will do if they face those madmen in the streets again. Julian looks at the crossbow wound he took and realizes his body is healing at an impossible, supernatural speed. It is just like the burn on his hand. He feels as if some dark power is slowly consuming him. Fearing what he is becoming, Julian decides he must find the wizard Alistair to seek answers about this curse. Serafina enters the room and asks if he is checking the injury. She wants to see how it looks. Miller tells the group that Silas used people as bait during the escape, and Serafina fought him for it. Julian walks down the hall and overhears the lady talking with her comrade. He stops to listen to them. Julian tells the lady that the others cannot understand his burden. He admits that he is terrified and confused. She warns him not to be reckless. Without her guidance, he will struggle to survive the dangers in the kingdom. She reveals she needs him too. She insists they must escape the city together, just like they swore that day. You and I both know she is dead wrong, but let us see how this dark choice changes everything for them. Far away at the high tower, an imperial knight survives and vows to hunt Julian down for his betrayal. Alina overhears the tense talk and thinks their fear is natural. They feel betrayed, but Julian knows his duty. Julian argues that they cannot abandon the group, not after everyone helped save him from the brink of death. He believes if they cross the great river, they can all escape the capital. He forbids talk of abandonment. Frustrated, the lady storms out. She snaps that Julian is acting like a naive and self-righteous noble idiot. Through the window, the men watch outlaws hunting monsters. Miller notes their war steeds could leave the creatures in the dust. He thinks they could cross the river with those mounts. However, the old knight says they need more horses. If they are all going to escape as one unit, they simply do not have enough mounts for everyone. The boy asks where Julian went. Serafina mentions she saw him heading toward the back of the manor washrooms. Miller suggests stealing the horses and making several trips, but the girl ignores him, still thinking of betrayal. Now pay attention, because this is where the outlaws find a burning tavern and demand their stolen loot. One man quickly understands that there were people hiding nearby, stealing their supplies while they were distracted. Old Barnaby wonders why no one checked if Rose was alive. He thinks they feared she carried the plague. In these dark times, anyone would hesitate to approach her. He wonders if she truly carries the lethal virus. Was that why the knights were burning everything? Barnaby mutters the poor girl should never have been left alone. Suddenly, two young squires enter the room. They are stunned to find the old man in the ruined building. Barnaby says he does not live there, but he has already searched and found no food or supplies left. The squires notice the girl and claim they have a moral duty to help, but the old man warns them. He tells the boys to leave quietly. One boy mocks him, calling Barnaby a grumpy and ancient peasant tyrant. The squire suggests they should teach the old man a lesson. Barnaby wonders if he can fight while injured. Before they can strike, the vengeful knight returns. Without a second thought, he shoots both of the squires down. The knight asks Barnaby if the other children have returned yet. The old man is terrified by the violence. He explains the boys were with the young master. A cold dread washes over Barnaby at the knight presence. The knight demands to know if the others are back yet. Barnaby says he is still waiting with Rose. The man asks if there is any way to send a message. Barnaby admits he has no messenger birds. Desperate to get the knight away, the old man decides to lie about a secret refuge at the citadel. He claims the kids mentioned, heading there for safety. The knight demands more details about this supposed sanctuary. Barnaby says it is the great hall where they first fled from. The knight decides to head there immediately. He says he will go to the refuge, but he insists on taking the old man and girl too. Barnaby agrees to go. It is becoming far too dangerous to stay in this ruin while monsters are hunting. And that is where we leave it. You and I just witnessed a very dangerous alliance start to form. That is where we leave it, as a beggar shows our hero a horse ready for his escape from the royal stables. To find the carriage, Arthur grabs Henry and warns him that the traveler was a lunatic. All right, you and I are diving into a very dangerous story. It was best to stay away, but the royal guard corners the elder, claiming he already swept the outer stables while entering the royal castle grounds. Meanwhile, a young chronicler is sketching near the Ironwater River to expose the truth of the corruption to all the common folk across the entire kingdom. The lad tells his scribe that sneaking past the sentries was a nightmare, but they had to get this close to witness the horror themselves. As they move through the mud, they document every horror, eventually deciding to show the terrifying state of the riverbanks to the people watching. Now watch closely here. This is where the chronicler shows his companion is armed with an enchanted fire rod, just in case something goes horribly wrong. They stumble upon massive, pulsing eggs scattered along the shore, and both men are frozen in shock by the sheer, unnatural scale of these things. The scribe starts shaking, begging to turn back, but the chronicler refuses. This was a legendary story that would make him famous throughout the entire empire. He claims they already cleared the outer walls and found no beasts, just those silent, pulsing pods, so there was nothing left to fear. Still, the young man keeps sketching for the kingdom, lying by claiming they might actually encounter a fused abomination lurking deep within the shadows. But little do they know, a beast is watching from the murky depths. Their journey comes to a sudden halt just as things were getting real. Trust me, you and I must see what happens next. Subscribe to Master Toby's Chronicle, and I will see you all in the very next part.